like Galen.
Most, I mean, for we use a different application, WebEx, and I don't have to use the headset with that. But the microphone on the laptop that I'm using is from, I'm not using my work laptop here. So this is, for whatever reason, the mic is not working and I didn't have a whole lot of time to troubleshoot it. So I just said, I'll get the headset.
So Alan, if this doesn't work in the next minute or so, we're just gonna keep rolling with this as they work in the background and get it fixed, or what's your thoughts?
My thoughts here are the fact that there's a button right at the bottom of this that actually says record, that Brett can actually hit that and we can run record, because when you end the meeting,
We're
we
live.
actually have a public record. We're good.
We're good.
Either way.
I like that the red dot in the corner is still where, if you look up in the top right corner, that's where we live right now.
Right.
Or top left corner, excuse me.
Twyla, it's all you. Go ahead. Let's go through roll call and attendance.
All right.
Record.
So the meeting will open for May 5th, 2020. And roll call, Council Albert.
Here.
Council Colby.
Here.
Council Ganon.
Here.
Council La Rochelle.
Here.
Council Ward.
Here.
Council Lunt.
Here.
Council Fellows.
Here.
We have 7 present. So the first item on your agenda is the workshop. Order 2020-69 to open the workshop to discuss municipal budgets.
Okay, so the last time we met was on March 17th, and that's when I presented the initial municipal budget. And at that time, our budget was an increase of $181,897. And at that time, I felt really good about that, especially with the additional revenues we were potentially going to see in the new fiscal year with revenue sharing. But since then, everything has really gone south, and I don't expect to see the revenues in, so that's really going to affect how we do the commitment this year. So with all that in mind, I went back to the department heads and I asked them if they would just look at their budgets one more time and try to eliminate for this one fiscal year coming up, to defer some of the items that they have in the budget if they can. And I also, my proposal is any vacant positions we currently have not to fill for this one fiscal year. So with that said, we went back to the drawing board, and at this point in time, it's not quite finished yet because I'm still waiting for the insurance to come in. And we're out in the market for the insurance right now because our current carrier was going to make some changes that we couldn't live with as far as on the fire trucks. It wasn't going to be replacement costs. It was going to be actual cash value for any fire truck over 10 years old. So we're out in the market right now to see what we can come up with. So with that said, we went back to the drawing board and I have quite a few cuts, and it involves multiple departments. And right now, the cut is $548,653. So if I take that into consideration and then my original budget increase of $181,897, that means I have a budget reduction of, if you approve the budget reductions that I proposed, we have our revised budget right now shows a reduction of $366,103. Now, what's going to affect that is my estimated decrease in excise tax. I have no idea what to even project for that because of the mandate that's in place right now to extend the expiration date. So I'm not getting excise tax in now that I normally would get, but I anticipate getting that in the next fiscal year. So conservatively, I've budgeted right now a $200,000 decrease. And I've also estimated a 40% decrease in revenue sharing from the fiscal year 21 projection. So that puts me at 124,000 decrease in revenue sharing. And then I also estimated a 40% reduction in the funding that we get for our roads. And that puts me at 40,000. So when I add all three of those reductions, I come up with 364,000, which wipes out my 366,000 on the budget side. So it pretty much leaves us flat right now. We have some significant cuts through the department. Some of them, were voluntary. Some of them, we just reduced some line items, but some of the reductions are because of other reasons, and they're just reductions, not because we cut anything. I sent you out the list today of all the proposed budget reductions, and on the wastewater treatment plant side, that we have a reduction of 22,360. And as I mentioned earlier, some of these, we just want it to be one fiscal year, but, you know, I don't know if that's realistic or not, based on what we're going through. Any questions?
Did you say the amount that you came up with for a reduction was 548,653 off of the proposed budget, correct?
Right.
So that leaves you with I'm getting 967 total. I'm sorry, 9,674,9.
I haven't plugged those numbers in. I'm just going by the cuts versus the increase in the budget.
Okay, the reason I ask is I was looking at it, I sent a spreadsheet before, based on the $4,000 reduction, and I just looked at it again today. And if the budget alone for the town looks like almost a 5.5% decrease off of the proposal. I'm sorry, against last year. But if you add the school into it, then we're still in an increase status. So if we get a decrease in revenue, we still have a considerable problem.
Right.
Yeah.
The estimated revenue reduction right now wipes out my reduction on the budget side. So we're like flat right now. The other part I wanted to mention is we will see an increase in the homestead exemption, so that will help out a bit. We won't see the full 25,000 because we're not at 100%. We'll see a percentage of that, but we will not be doing any type of increases to the land or building values this year.
That's a huge win compared to what we had last year.
Yeah.
The trend that you're experiencing associated with any curtail effort or change in Lewiston, same thing, is that the loss in revenues that were projected ate that up, so you were at neutral. So I'm not surprised. One of the dialogues for as we move forward is, I know revenues is one of the items that Diane brings it to us at the very last minute to be able to keep that as open-ended. She's giving you guys the update of where we're at now. I feel good that she's at least got that here, because what I wasn't sure of was where she was on the revenue side for discussion point tonight. That was one of the key points that I know Dawn wanted to hear specifically. So has she addressed that for your perspective, Dawn?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I think it's important, if I may, to, some people may not realize that Alan, you had actually reached out to Diane to actually ask her to look at the budget, but trying to maintain services and keep everybody employed that's employed at this point. I think that's a huge thing to mention, especially people maybe listening don't understand that how you getting to where you are, but we're trying to do all the, how would I say it, the hard choices, but without actually reducing the services of the community. And that's not easily done, it really isn't. And not knowing what the revenues will be, just estimating the best of our knowledge, it's tough, but hopefully everybody understands that what Diane just did probably wasn't really easy, but it did actually, there's department heads that have to sacrifice some of the things they were really looking to gain this year. I thank you for putting that forward, because I mean, the idea of retaining all our employees that we have currently is important.
Well, to your point, Fern, I don't know if you guys, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, good. To your point, Fern, it goes back to one of the, when we were putting goals together earlier this year, one of your goals, which is getting the right people and then keeping them. So I think that just is part and parcel. In the tough times, we're showing that we have the mettle to try to figure out ways to do that. So I'm glad that we're supporting that goal even in the tough times.
one of the things, maybe Diane, for the listening dot in the upper left-hand corner and in the corner office that we usually speak to, there are key positions that are vacant right now. I remember something of the nature of a mechanic at PW, and maybe you could go through those, because the point that I'm making to follow up on what Fern expressed is the fact that it is a lot more humane to deal with a vacant position and postponing fulfilling than it is to actually consider furlough, which has been the intent through this process.
Right, so currently we have a vacant position, like you said, at the Public Works Department, it's a mechanic's position. We also have a police officer position that's vacant due to an internal promotion. So we're not filling that position either. Both those positions have been removed from the upcoming budget. We also have a potential opening at the, well, I know we're gonna have one due to a retirement at the rec department. That one has also been eliminated from the upcoming budget, although I may have to add some money back in. I wanna see where I'm at before year end, because I have to pay out some accrued time on that individual. But all three of those with the benefits and some other changes that we made on overtime accounts and just regular part-time accounts, that's $266,068 is just in personnel costs. That's part of that $548,000. So the personnel cost of the reductions is $266,000. And that's really mainly where you're getting your reductions in personnel. There's some other large ticket items that we were able to reduce, like the CMP. I was able to make another reduction in that. And
17 grand, right?
what's that?
That was 17 grand, right?
Yes. An additional 17 grand.
Wasn't there a check for 60,000 or something?
We haven't gotten that yet. They're still reviewing that, whether they're gonna send us money or give us a credit, but that's still hanging out there.
But either way, that can affect the budget pretty
It'll
well.
affect our cash, is what it'll do. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it'd be important too to mention the idea of Diane going out and actually doing some, let's say, outreach for better prices on fuel and propane this year. Diane, maybe you could just actually give a brief overview of what we're saving there.
Yes, we did. We went out to bid early. Well, when the prices dropped, although they dropped quite a bit more since then, but we've been able to save quite a bit of money, probably to the tune of 15 to 20,000 just on fuel by changing, by getting a really good price, a low walk-in price. It was just in the timing. I was able to do it at the right time this year for a change. So that's saving us some money. I just was gonna look here at some of the other. We, like on the contracted professional services under the planning department, that was a substantial reduction if council approves that. Instead of budgeting the 21,000, we're gonna just put a placeholder of 10,000 this year and do it on an as-needed basis for a planner, instead of doing it as a retainer, so to speak. We dropped the legal fees. We've had a small decrease in software and services. Yeah, and each department, they had some significant decreases. The police department really did a good job. But there again, it's just for 1 year. And next year, we're gonna have to look at these going back up again. But there's a lot of cuts here that added up to the 548,000. The other
soundbite that I would offer for that, Diane, is
what's that?
The key soundbite that I would offer for that, Diane, is the 548,000 was a group effort amongst all departments.
Exactly.
I
Yes.
appreciate everybody embracing the initiative that you put to this.
Yep.
In that regard, because there isn't a department that's coming out of this that doesn't have a direct cost of something that could be utilized in the coming year, that given the options and given the choices of what we're looking at, they took it serious enough to be able to bring in a budget that is flat, to be able to be addressing a pretty sizable concern.
And if I may, Alan, with this, Diane, I believe, looking through it, what I see is we haven't really sacrificed any of our replacement plans as far as for the PD vehicles. Everything's still on task.
Exactly.
That's good.
The hydrant, because we were expecting an increase starting July 1st, they're gonna, I believe they're gonna push off that increase until January. So we were able to save 37,000 just on that one line item. And then we have under equipment, vehicles, and public works, I removed the 55,000, but I've put it on the list to fund up through unassigned fund balance. My unassigned fund balance list is gonna be very short. It's probably only gonna be that one item, with the exception of Twyla's office for the book restoration. The police department software upgrade, I'm gonna fund that through this year's budget. It's not a software upgrade, it's the watch guard that we need to do. So I'm gonna do that through this year's budget, so that'll come off in the unassigned fund balance list. And also tax abatements, and I think we should do this, in the future as well, is I've taken that off and we should just fund that through overlay. That's typically what a lot of towns do. For some reason, this town's always budgeted the amount, but I've removed that 10,000 and we'll just fund it through our overlay when needed.
Okay, so total on fund balance, money that you're recommending? If I'm hearing you correctly, 65.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, the only reason I say that, Alan, is because right now my tax collections are down and also my excise tax collections are down. I mean, I just looked today and I still have to collect another 358,000 in excise tax between now and June 30th in order for us to cover this year's commitment.
Right.
And if I don't, that's going to be a direct hit to your fund balance.
Right. One of the other points that's in there for discussion, Don brought it up in a conversation that he and I were having this morning. The TAN item for tax anticipation note that you guys are seeing for interesting expense going up. There's an issue that hasn't presented itself of recent memory within our municipality, and the fact that we've always had cash flow, so we haven't had to borrow. That short-term borrowing has a cost because at this point in time, revenue streams coming in, we made the March commitment where the majority of taxes come in September for those two key dates. Not knowing what next year is going to be, there's a direct cost for that. We want to make sure that we have cash on hand to be able to pay bills at the end of the day.
Right.
Dan's taking care of that with,
And the interest expense on that, I removed that from the budget as well. I guess I didn't even include it at this point, but that's about 7,800. So I would like to fund that through unassigned fund balance because it's really an unknown.
It's in there at 7829 through.
Right, but it wasn't in my original budget, so it's really not if we don't fund it through unassigned fund balance, it'll have to be an increase. I'll have to put that in.
Oh, okay.
Alan, may I ask, what is the process, Diane, if we actually do end up running short come June, to take that money out of unassigned? Is that actually a process, or is that something written into our charter automatically that we can do?
I don't think we're going to run short between now and the end of June. I think we're going to be fine with what we have on hand now. But just remember, unassigned fund balance isn't cash.
right.
So we would have to tap into the TAN.
Yeah, the cash on hand is key when we're trying to pay bills. In that regard, so it's, short version is not tapping the undesignated fund balances intended for what the policy was written for, to be able to pay for cash flow issues as they present themselves, if they present themselves. So it's, if we were having this discussion 3 years ago when we didn't have a stronger policy, it'd be a different issue, because at that point, I mean, the person that's in the back of my mind that I'm hearing quite clearly is Eric Mativier used to beat that drum repeatedly, and I respected him for it because they were in that process. If we dropped below 12%, we are required by charter to actually have a plan to be able to repay what we are short over a 3-year period of time. So there's a reason why we're living where we're living. I respect that, because knowing when next year close, this year's budget, I should say, I would like to see where we're at. Next year's budget for FY21 is not going to be any less complicated. And frankly, if we don't have to tap fund balance this year, I think you might be looking at that next year. And I don't know what year 3 brings, but there's going to be a certain level. It should be truly that rainy day for looking at large specific items that don't have to be on the taxpayer.
Yeah.
Anything else on that, Don? I know you had a lot on that topic too. I know you had a couple of questions.
No, I think I'm all right with it. When we get to the agenda, if we just do a slow explanation for me and the rest of the public that's financially not great, that would be good.
Agenda for what specific topic, Don?
Hang on a second. It's 2020-74.
Oh, the one you asked about this morning. Yes, okay, I got you. Okay, no, yeah, absolutely. Okay, the next topic that was in the mind, and I've heard it from a couple of you guys, and whoever wants to jump in on it first, I guess, pay increase that we actually talked and we put in motion for this budget. You guys all know what that figure is. What's everybody's appetite for that, for where we're at right now? Because you've heard what's being presented. We're looking at a 548 now. I'll leave it at that. Frame it. Who wants to go on the topic?
I mean, I think it's kind of a challenge, but in a sense, you know, a lot of the concerns that were around us as far as for everyday living expenses, I think were there then and they're still now. So, you know, my feeling is the economy out there, you know, once this actually passes by, will actually work well. I think we may see a couple of hiccups as you're talking about, but at the end of the day, I don't think we ought to, I don't think everything we talked about before is not relevant now. I think it's still, to me, I think we're still looking at those same numbers moving forward unless something else comes up. That's my opinion.
I think that over the coming year and 2 years, we're going to need to be competitive as we have been recently. And to curtail things now begins to put us behind an 8 ball, and not to mention morale. So I think we should go as planned.
Okay, so I'm not hearing anything from anybody at present to be able to reduce what we have for the projected increase for the coming year that's built into this budget. Is that a fair assessment? Okay. Can we tackle the next piece to this and the fact that also we know that there are key positions in this budget that are higher than that for specific reasons that Diane has identified. I've made a point of bringing each of those positions out in the dialogue to be able to have her speak to them specifically. The point that I would make, there are specific positions in this that are new to our organization that work towards our goal, that we want to make sure that they are felt like they're valued to be able to retain the key staff. The one thing that take it with a grain of salt is the fact that one of the things that I fundamentally disagree with on a budget is building increases for somebody just simply based on longevity, because the pay scale hasn't kept pace. We can't control the market outside of that for that reason, so we want to be extremely specific on what's actually going on, because if there's a pressure on the department, we're clearly seeing in the budget that's actually there a demonstration that there's a pressure that actually hasn't kept pace with what's currently going on. One of the people that I know and we as a council rely on heavily represented here is the city clerk, is a town clerk position in that regard. And this had a full-time staff of 2 at one time that we've yet to be able to get back to that place. So I don't want to out a specific position because I disagree with it. I've seen it play very poorly with the commission at the county level, but it's a perfect example right now is the fact that the pressures that are there are the reality that we're dealing with the budget that we've been dealt. Is that a fair assessment of what you presented to us, Diane, please?
Yes, absolutely.
I do want to put it out there, and I'm sorry, when you said earlier, Alan, was that everybody's assessment? I tried to chime in, but I was muted before I could get there. You started on to the next topic, well, not the next topic, but the continuation of. So I just want to, I'm going to put it out, play devil's advocate. It's hard for me to think that a constituent is going to, any taxpayer is going to look at that, the raises built into, salary increases built in to a budget when we're cutting in other areas. So it's just something to be mindful of. And I do want to stick with our goal and our plan to make sure that our staff feel valued and that we are being competitive. But I also think we have to keep the door open and we have to have honest conversations with staff to let them know that we don't know how this is going to play out. And this is something that we're going to try to work with and continue on right now. We may have to revisit it, but I don't think it's a hard and fast, set in stone. And if nobody else feels that way, that's fine. But that's just the way I'm feeling.
One of the points that I would bring with that, Mr. Albert, is the fact that we've had the discussion for this year and this year only. I do not know what you guys' temperature will be for the coming year. So the fact is we haven't made a commitment for year 2 at all in that regard. So that is a reality here, is the fact that the next year's budget pressures are not going to be any less involved than they were this year. So there may be a different choice.
Works for me. Just wanted to get it out there.
And I would agree that next year is another issue, totally, from what we're doing right now. And if we deviate too much from what we've got planned, we put ourselves in jeopardy for the future.
Right. Anybody else on that topic? I just heard a few from people on payroll and specifics. I just wanted to give anybody an opportunity to be able to chime in based on everything they're seeing.
So at this point in time, because you brought up the clerk's assistant's position, are you all on board with me keeping that in the budget the way we presented it?
Diane, I'm asking specifically, and the fact is I'm not hearing anybody that's actually talking here for any of the positions for the increases.
Right.
And I'm not hearing any one position. I'm saying all of them. I did not hear anybody weigh in otherwise.
All right.
Just for the benefit of that, for the record, to the listening doc, there are 6 positions that actually have been identified that you guys have heard the specifics of in that regard. Okay. PW.
Yeah.
You got, no, I'm not out of you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Randy, in regard is the fact that, my concern here for your budget is strictly, I want to give you the resources to be able to pay what we can do with historic lows in prices of fuel. And I'm optimistic as heck right now that I am hopeful that we actually get good bid prices. We have a level of $475,000 for paving that we've been able to keep at for the last 4 years. Am I seeing anybody that's represented here tonight that's actually not willing for that commitment right here, right now, tonight? I'm way in, please.
I think we need to actually keep moving forward because our roads aren't getting any better. I don't think there's anybody in the public either that drives around and sees it not being as, this past year, even though we didn't have drastic winter, still took a beating on our roads. I see some of these crews out there doing a lot of patching, but you can patch so much. So I think we're making little progress every year. So if we stop this year, I think we're gonna have to do twice as much next year, which I don't think it eventually gets us anywhere. Just talking to people, Randy, because I mean, as a hope of a council, we were hoping that the idea to reduce fuel costs and stuff were going to allow us to get some better bids. But talking to some people, just as I know in the industry, it doesn't sound like they're thinking that the prices are being lower this year. What's your thoughts?
I've already reached out to a couple of, I talked to a couple of suppliers, Northeast Paving being one. I know the batch manager there. And because the crude oil and the petroleum products down right now, last year when they were paying a premium and they didn't up the prices all that much, it kind of like has to go a whole year cycle with the petroleum products being down. And it's not really the asphalt itself, the liquid. It's the production of the crushed product that makes it more money. So if they have to pay, you know, a contractor, let's say like, you know, Gendron or Crooker has to pay for, you know, the manufacturing of the, you know, the stone dust, the 3/8 stone or the 1/2 inch stone and everything like that. That's what drives the cost up. It's not really the asphalt liquid itself, even though that's only a small part of it. Everybody's misconception is that the petroleum product is the major factor, but it's not. It's the production of the material that goes into it instead.
And it does sound like most of the contractors already have this year pretty much scheduled through, so it isn't like they're sitting around waiting to get projects. Is that correct, or?
That is correct. A lot of them are getting booked up. My paving from last year is going to be scheduled to do May 18th, and I should have everything buttoned up within a couple of weeks, everything that was done for last year. So going into this year, we'll have no projects laid over from last year. And they have a new, well, depending on who gets the bid, you know, we're going to try to get, you know, the first and second layer. The only reason why we did that in the gross development was to allow for a frost cycle and, you know, to get everything to settle in. Good thing we did, we had a couple of sinkholes, which they fixed. But now with the next layer that's going on over that, the next surface, everything will be covered up. Should look real good.
The reason I'm actually bringing this item specifically here as a line item is, Diane, anything associated with cuts for the last go around, everything for PW, that is included in the 548 reduction that you just gave us?
Say that again now? Yes.
The $548,000 savings, that includes everything for the PW?
Yes.
That came out in the last 2 week discussion?
Yes.
Okay. The reason I ask is because if we're at position neutral, I'm gonna retract what I was originally hoping for is, I was hoping to go higher than 475 to give Randy the tools to be able to get more done for paving in this coming year. In that regard, and one of the things that's a saving grace from our perspective is, yes, contracts are filling up, but one of the things that I have spoken to Randy about and the business partners that I work with in Lewis is the fact that contractors are specifically looking to municipalities for what they can get under contract for the coming year because they're in the same position we are. They want to retain their staff and they want to know what they've got the contract to be able to work with to be able to do so. Because the labor market is one of the key points that's driving their costs. I'm not hearing the spooky numbers with 40% increase over last year like we were for the projects. But I am hopeful that we're at least getting a bid that's comparable to last year to be able to get what Randy needs done. This is the first year in 3 that I'm optimistic and appreciating that we're not just chasing the sewer project that has been in one specific area to be able to get out of that deficit. You know, so looking at his list that he's presented to us, that's huge. Hearing based on what thought process went into it, and if we can get to more, albeit that's a good approach. The reason I'm bringing it up here tonight is the fact that I would like to have, if nobody is saying that they would go below 475, we allow him to work with Diane to put a bid spec out there, contingent like we did last year. The fact that upon ratification or approval of this bid, budget, that he has a contract that he can go with so we can get out there on the street sooner than later. The unfortunate thing with the municipality running in June is you don't know the funding. That only puts you in a construction period that's actually July to September when the plants close down. And it's a very narrow window of opportunity where everybody competes for trying to get his attention for their project. I make the recommendation when it'll be in the open session tonight when we can vote, is the fact is if we get a clear consensus here tonight, he is authorized to be able to go out to bid as soon as we have that available. All right. other topics. Cassie, I know we talked at the meeting last week. Anything new from the state that is coming? I don't see Mr. Timberlake actually represented here. I know that we extended the offer to him. If he was interested, take him up on his offer. Anything new on that topic?
I haven't heard anything else.
Yeah, I know he did reach out to you. Why don't you just rehash to the listening dot then what you heard for budget projections from the state and what that means to a municipality?
Well, right now, just due to the current situation, the state is looking at a $1 billion shortfall. That was last what had been reported to me. Before they adjourned session, they had set the mill rate for the schools to be able to finalize their budgets. But with everything, again, they're not sure when they come back if they were going to have to revisit that, depending on what they have for revenues. So they're kind of in the same boat that we are. If revenues are coming in, they kind of have to sit around and wait and figure it out once it does start coming in. So
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, Alan?
Yeah?
We're getting some feedback on live stream. There's an echo, so if everybody can mute who's not speaking, that might help. And also to make sure nobody has both a phone and computer audio on at the same time.
Okay. Norm, the question was asked last week, and school, they're the other lion's share associated with this budget as well too. I know I've heard from several counselors on our intent to try to get this as flat as we can. What have you heard from the school department after last night's meeting?
So in speaking with the school committee chair, I know that they went back and they did their first swipe, which I know was reported that it was down to 7%. I've gone ahead and communicated, and she's made it clear that she's heard from other councils as well. She's aware of what the task is that they're trying to do. I made it a point to mention to them what the municipal side has done as far as going back and trying to do their best to come up with additional ways to save, and that we were able to pull a $500,000 together in savings. So. In my most recent talk with her, she has been working with the superintendent who has some leads on some potential ways to offset them the funding. One of the messages that was communicated was that she's been hearing a lot of people say to her, well, if they didn't go to school this last semester and a half or whatever, then there should be a significant savings. And the flip side of that is, while there was some savings, there was also some cost that was incurred. The amount of meals that we're putting out right now is well above what we would normally put out, and that's money that we have to pay for that right now. Whether or not we get reimbursed for it down the line, that's to be determined. And whether or not we believe, to the tune of 90% will be reimbursed or not, we don't know. But in the meantime, it still has to come out of our pocket. So that being said, we're having to pay for that additional cost, not knowing if we'll see that down the line somewhere. Then the other side is that they had a couple of expenses which weren't a surprise. They talked about one of their boilers being bad, or it's a tune of $80,000. But where they're at, to put the bow on this, is that they understand that they have to come in as close to flat as they can. And they've looked at positions that they have considered, and they've streamlined to the point where they're going with the needs. They're not looking at any wants at this point. So I would be more than happy to say that I had a percentage number. I don't. I talked with the chair yesterday to see if we were actually short something up on that. And they're still working some numbers over. But I do believe very clearly that they've gotten the message and understand that they're going to do everything they can, just like their partners on the municipal side, to come up with something that falls in line based on this new crisis that we're all dealing with. So that's what I can give all of you for an update.
Any other questions for Norm on that topic, guys?
Hey, Alan, I have a question for you. Are we going to have any more budget discussions after tonight? Do you want to? The reason I ask is Mark Stevens is on right now, and he wants to address the council on the reduction in his budget with not filling that secretary's position.
I
which is part
don't,
of the personnel reductions by not filling a vacant position.
I'm not opposed to actually keeping it if we don't have a specific item there, but I wasn't hearing any consensus that we were willing to be able to go any others, but I would not hear him out as well
Okay.
too, to be able to speak to that.
Right.
And if we got time tonight to be able to do it, I'm almost through my checklist here, but, my question, Norm, back to school, if you mind you. The fact is, you mentioned the soundbite that caught my attention for the listening dot that we always try to speak to. Can you talk to us about the increase in meals and who they're going to and what the need is specifically to address that cost just for public consumption?
Absolutely. So traditional, and I'm sure the chair will correct me, but my understanding in my conversations with her is you have the traditional student base and those that would qualify for free or reduced lunches. And then that would be the budget, what we would budget off of. And as we all may have heard over the last several years, we've always run a budget deficit because even though they're free or not free, but reduced lunch, or even sometimes folks that are paying full lunch and have a lunch account, we don't always get reimbursed for that. And we've carried forward that balance every year. It's grown and grown. And most recently, there was some spotlight shown on that because one of our local businesses, I'm going to give a plug to Eastcraft, Maggie Oliver did some things with selling product to help offset some of that. And so that being said, we've always carried that balance because we're getting quality education. And sometimes it can be a challenge when you have a lot of students with different needs. So I'll agree with you. I think that, anytime any department has to take a step back and look at, we have to do it differently because of this catastrophic change. How do you balance that? And I think all of them have done a fantastic job up to this point.
Anything else on school, guys? I appreciate the perspective because the intent with everything from, it was the business meeting just before these things, the COVID stuff struck, and we actually started this is our first meeting back officially. A lot of work's actually been done. The intent of where they started on their budget, a little bit of a lot of concern from a lot of different folks, and I think there's been some positive effort. The intent was to buy them some time to be able to make some real choices rather than reacting at the next public hearing point where it's at that point too late and we already have committed to a vote at the school budget level that needs to happen yea or nay. So, trying to get them on board with the approach that we're making. I thank you all for doing so. All right, any other budget items? I have one, it's on the topic. I'm glad Mark's here, and the fact that I brought up originally the salaries, and there's another line item that we'll talk about tonight in the rental for Beaver Park, specifically that are on the agenda, and I see the two as related, quite frankly. In my opinion, and the fact is to be able to best represent his interest, I don't know if I actually would see this any different. The fact that knowing what the reduction in the overtime at that position and the rental income are kind of always been a push, I would float the idea for consideration is the fact is rather than a salary increase to specific duties, I actually would advocate that maybe we consider a stipend to be able to do so in conjunction with the rental agreement to best represent his interest here. In that regard, it was, for the listening dot, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of a $6,000 overtime item. And the fact is the rental on this is a $4,800 item to be able to say that they offset each other. In that regard, the need is still going to be there associated with that. I get his perspective because he does not want it presented that he's actually living anywhere for free in that. But realistically speaking, I think the better approach on this would be handled through a stipend, in my opinion. I'll leave that out there for you. This is just for consumption, but it is an active line item for discussion tonight for the rental agreement when that time comes. Anybody have anything on that before I open it up to Mark with the specifics of the position that he'd like to advocate for?
So, just so I'm clear, I'm hearing this for the first time as far as the stipend piece. I guess maybe I didn't catch it. I understood that we were going to be talking to him about, talking with him about him taking over tonight and that piece of it. But I didn't realize, was that part of that line tonight, or is this the first time you're kind of introducing that idea?
No, the overtime was actually cut because it was attributed to the administration position that's there, but the duties that actually are behind that are still going to be necessary within the park.
And so
That's my working understanding of the topic.
Okay, good. That's fine. That's what I just wanted clarity there. That's great.
Alan, are we, I know we're getting close to that 7 o'clock time frame. I'm not sure if Twyla, if we actually need to, do we need to actually go right into the main meeting, or can we actually still overrun this?
We would not need to close a workshop and open a meeting or anything. It's the same meeting. So you can continue on.
Perfect. Matt, I waited for that last moment on this topic for just that reason, because I know that anything here, we're not officially voting at all. So anything that we're going to be deciding would actually be there. So
before you start with that, Alan, before you start with that, do we have a general consensus when we're doing the budget hearings and accepting the budgets now? I know there's supposed to be a new work list, or I just want some direction on when we plan to do these things.
We're still planning to do the actual budget public hearing on June 16th. And then on June 23rd is when you'll adopt the budget.
School, Diane?
School is going to be June 2nd, right, Twyla, for the public hearing? And then the following Tuesday is when you would vote on the school budget. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Hey, before we get too far into this exercise, and call me corny, but I want to make sure we're doing it right. It's our first, this is our first video one. Let's do the pledge, if everybody's cool with that, because we didn't do it in the opening of the workshop.
Hold on though. The fact is, and the purpose associated with the budget workshop, if you don't mind, Mark's asked for time here before we shift into the agenda. I'd like to actually acknowledge him.
All right, cool. I wasn't sure if we were sliding into the meeting or not. That's
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Go, Mark.
Thank you for, hearing this, hearing me out and talking about the administrative assistant position in my department. I just wanted to say, conversations with Diane, and she's been very supportive of, especially listening to me about this position, knowing that it's unprecedented times and that we have a situation ahead of us that really we don't know, what 3 months is going to look like versus 6 months or a year. Knowing that, we work with people every day and our business is people. We bring in over $300,000 in revenues on just the amount of programs we have. And this person is the face of our department. This position is the face of our department. Sherry's been in this position for over 10 years now. And because of her, the amount of collections have increased. I mean, we used to go a year with 15 or 20% of our fees not being collected because people either didn't pay them or whatever. But Sherry's position is very critical, spending time on getting invoices out and getting the payments paid on time. She's done a great job with that. Eliminating this position would be critical in that process and allowing us to be able to, not only the hub of our communication, our department, but also collecting fees, invoicing, getting program flyers out, distributed. That's just some of the pieces of this puzzle. It's a critical position. Even if we decided to go with a part-time position, a 20-hour a week or a 30-hour a week position for this first year, we could probably go with something like that, a reduced position. just for this first year, because back in next year, I should say next May, April or May is when we start programming for the year 2021. I mean, it's going to be crazy busy again, and we're going to really need a position in our office that's going to be able to handle phone calls, handle the public coming in, and pretty much connecting all the pieces in our department. That's my hope, that you would consider and keep in that position at least a 3/4 position, or keep it full time. Right now, we're planning for our summer day camps. The governor had given us permission to have our summer day camp starting in June. Knowing that, last year we had 250 kids in our programs. That means a lot of people coming in, a lot of program participation with sport camps. Those doors being open right now, we know that we're going to be busy in June. Working with the superintendent right now on having all the schools available to us instead of just one, so that we can keep our program, our summer day camps spread out more, keeping it safer with this epidemic. And so with that, our doors are going to be open for our summer camps, and not having that position when Sherry gets done is going to be critical for next year. She's getting done in the end of August, 1st of September. So we'll be okay for this summer, but it's what I'm worried about is next year when things are back to normal. Hopefully we're back to normal. Anybody have any questions about this position? Anybody?
I do. Quick question, if you don't mind, Mark. So if she's going through the end of August, the good news there is it gets us through probably one of the busier times, but I'm sure you're anticipating that it'll probably be a little bit of a drop off in the summer program, just because we don't know what's going to happen. A lot of the trips that the kids normally go on, those places are going to be not available this year. So thinking of that, once you get past the August period, you're still going to have all the fall sports. And so I'm thinking, fingers crossed, we're still going to have all the fall sports. Where is there a spot somewhere in the year where Sherry ever sort of had a lull, or has it always been continuous throughout?
Well, if we were restructuring our department so that one of the positions will be an assistant director, we're changing some positions, and so some of that responsibility of the administrative assistant, she was also an event programmer. She did the Winterfest. The new assistant director will take on some of those positions. So yes, in the wintertime, there will be a lull.
Yeah. I was thinking about that. If you were thinking about this to a halftime position and trying to wrap my head around where would be, first, how much work is there that we can look at it and say, okay, critical times are here and here. And then after that, start talking about it. And that's just November through March.
It would be a more administrative, less programming, and invoicing. Nothing is as busy as June and July for us. June and July is crazy in a good way.
Mark, may I, the chair, if
yes.
you let me, the question mark is, I guess, with bringing up Norm's point is, out of Sherry's position with the new assistant administrator, I guess I'm not sure exactly what the title role was. How much of her job duties and a percentage do you think that person's going to take over? Is it 10%, 20%, 30%?
I would say probably 10%. 10%. Yeah, because that person, this position's already full-time. So what we're doing is we're restructuring. So we're just adding some responsibility to the assistant director, and that's going to be in the programming area. It's not very often where you go into a town rec department and you have your administrative assistant going out running a winter festival or, a fishing derby or something like that. So it's because she was, this position was living at the park. And so there was opportunities for them to grow some of the things that they were, because she was living there. So that's why we decided to change this. And also for succession, someone that would take my spot when I get ready to retire someday.
So I guess maybe I'm just trying to figure out, so in this upcoming budget, and so how many positions were you initially intending for? Were you intending to replace Sherry's position with another full-time position. And then there was another position also that you're bringing on, so there's going to be a addition to her also? Or, okay.
No, so let me explain it real quick. So the full-time maintenance person, who also has, the busiest time isn't during the winter time, but so take on this administrator's, Sherry's position, thank you, take down some of her position, so that would be some of their responsibilities. They would be running the winter festival and some of these other outdoor activities, instead of just being maintenance. And we've seen some other towns that have similar positions like that we thought would work really well in Lisbon.
So actually for the upcoming year, your budget was basically going to be maintaining similar to the year before as far as when it comes to personnel?
Yes.
As far as dollar value wise?
Yeah.
The question is more as if we actually do not support or fund that position again, I guess is the discussion you're having, right?
Right. We'd be losing a fourth of our full-time staff.
Now, is the changes that we actually are looking at tonight actually removing that position for this upcoming year? I assume that's what the discussion's for.
Yes, it does remove it. I took the position when I was looking at these cuts, anything that's going to be vacant, I just left vacant. Just in case we have to do layoffs down the road, it's easier to not fill a vacant position than to lay somebody off.
And I guess before I let Don continue on, I guess this would be an area that we don't have to discuss definitely tonight. I'm sure there'll be ongoing discussion about it, and maybe we can get some more information just to see how that plays out. But
I'd like to work with Mark some more on it, because if he can get by with a part-time person this upcoming year, we might be able to work something out with that. And, you had mentioned, Mark, that you might be able to find some additional cuts in your budget. We might be able to make it work.
Just for example, we just learned that Funtown and Splashdown closed down for the year. And I think somebody had mentioned that Norm had mentioned that we're not going to be doing a lot of these trips. We are going to be doing some of these trips, but they're going to be to state parks, which is, instead of $15 for each child, it's going to be like $2 per child. So we're going to be able to really reduce a lot of money from we have $30,000, I think, budgeted for trips. We're not going to be hitting that mark, not even close.
yeah. I mean, I would like to just see if you guys can work that through, because I do know it was a needed position, but other departments are taking cuts also. So
Right.
That being said, I'll let Don continue on.
No, my only thought was if I look at the budget reductions, that position as a full-time is approximately total little over $60,000 in budget items. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. So that's what we're looking at as a full-time thing. So otherwise part-time would be less costly.
Half of that is indirect compensation, though.
Yeah. No, I know, I see it.
Yeah.
I mean, if we can make it work with a position 25 hours a week or under, that gets us out of the ACA issue, because we would have to offer health insurance. And if you're going to be doing that, you might as well keep them full-time, because, you're looking at a potential of 23 to 25,000 just in health insurance benefits. But if we can do it just for this upcoming year, we can get by. And like Mark said, this summer, Sherry's still going to be here, so that, we don't have to worry about this summer. It's next year that we need to worry about. So
I think we could do that, Diane.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm just going to float the elephant in the room here just to say it. So if we're looking at cutting this back to a half-time position because we're trying to kind of just limp our way along, Mark, do you think Sherry would do half-time for the year?
No.
Okay. Worth an ask. I just
It's
figured.
gotta be Alaska, right?
That's not a white elephant.
Yeah, that's all right. You can't blame me for trying.
I talked her into the last 3 years of staying, and I even offered an office puppy. Okay, we got an office puppy, so I'm done. I have nothing left.
Solid effort there. Solid effort.
She's happy. She's really happy to be done. She's done a great job.
So one of the key points that I would make is timing matters. In fact, is what you're advocating here for this coming year for this position, Diane, is a deferment, not actually an elimination of the position. So we
That's
would
correct.
In other light, you actually would postpone when you would actually fill that position.
Right.
So, to your point, if you got through summer with Sherry being here and you went vacant until next spring, you might be able to still keep that person on at a full-time level for that same value of a part-time position, with it already being considered in next year's budget. Am I hearing that as an option?
Yep, that could be an option. Yes, absolutely.
Well, I would want to even explore that, because one of the things that I would clearly have in everybody's mind is once you eliminate an FTE, you don't get them back. Again, we just have to look at the town clerk's position within Twyla's shop, and the fact is that's a perfect example. Is that they don't come back. We're still talking about this, and it never elevates to a discussion where you add positions, and then it's an unfortunate. There's only so much to go around in a budget, and everything runs. For one position that's added here, it comes at somebody else for an expense. Anything else on the topic? I think it was good dialogue. I thank you, Mark.
All right, thank you.
The question was asked for the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm not really seeing a flag, Mr. Albert, so I think that would kind of flounder in my opinion. You got it? All right. Everybody want to please stand? We'll do it. Mr. Albert's got us. This is like third grade. I forget my teacher now, but you're at the head of the class, and go for it. You lead us, sir. Everybody has to come off mute here if we're going to do this.
And all right, here we go. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for indulging me.
That was interesting.
That was some echo.
I'm fond of telling people these days, tell me nice things. So thank you for telling us nice things, Mr. Albert.
Normalcy. We got to maintain some sort of normalcy.
Okay, Twyla, you have the floor.
Are you ready for the next item?
Next item, Twyla.
Be good news and recognition, Order 2020-71, the proclamation for Kids to Parks Day. The motion would be to adopt the following proclamation. Whereas May 16th, 2020 is the 10th Kids to Parks Day organized and launched by the National Parks Trust, held annually on the third Saturday of May. And whereas Kids to Parks Day empowers kids and encourages families to get outdoors and visit America's parks, public lands, and waters. Whereas we should encourage children to lead a more active lifestyle to combat issues of childhood obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and hypercholesterolemia. And whereas Kids to Parks Day will broaden children's appreciation for nature and outdoors. And now, therefore, we, the Town Council of Lisbon, do hereby proclaim May 16th as Kids to Parks Day. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
A second.
And roll call, if you're ready. Councillor Albert?
Yes.
Councillor La Rochelle?
Yes.
Councillor Lunt?
Yes.
Councillor Ganong?
Yes.
Councillor Ward?
Yes.
Councillor Colby?
Yes.
And Councillor Fellows?
Yes.
Order passed 7-0. You ready for the next item?
Can I make a comment on that?
Yep.
On National Bring Your Kids to the Park Day has recently changed 2 weeks ago, 2 Fridays ago. The National Parks Trust under the National Parks Recreation Division decided to change it to bring the parks to your kid day. So I just want to make sure the public understands that it's not bring your kid to the park day this year because of the epidemic and everything. So it is still in effect, but they just want kids to stay home. This was done, like I said, 2 weeks ago in April. So I just wanted you guys to know that.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mark. Next item, Twyla.
Next item, there are no public hearings. It would be audience participation and response for agenda items. So with this, the public would submit comments for agenda items to brichardson@lisbonme.org.
Brett, do we have anything? Because I am been watching email throughout the course of this and I'm seeing nothing, so I would have to defer to you.
Hey, Ellen, nothing so far. We're on a 30-second tape delay, so let's pause for 20 seconds and I'll check my email. And we're good.
Appreciate it. We're next item, Twyla.
Under consent agenda, and consent agenda items are considered to be routine and will be considered for adoption by one motion with no separate discussion unless a counselor requests an item be removed for immediate discussion. Any counselor wishing to remove an item may do so now. Seeing none. Order 2020-72. Motion is to approve the municipal accounts payable. Municipal accounts payable warrants for $996,198.03. The municipal payroll warrants, $266,080.02. The school accounts payable warrants for $122,807.94. The school account payroll warrants for $701,699.39, along with the minutes of March 17th and appointed election clerks per 21A, Section 503A as presented, and to set a public hearing on June 2nd for Peter Pesky, doing business as Peter Pesky Maine Lobster. He is an itinerant vendor at the 501 Lisbon Street. And to reschedule the May 19th public hearing to June 2 for ordinance changes regarding the accessory dwelling units, to authorize the town manager to sign the RHR Smith audit engagement letter for the fiscal year 2020 annual audit, and approve the addendum school budget validation referendum warrant and timeline as presented, and to change the council meeting date from July 14th to July 21.
Can I ask a question before I take a motion? The June 2nd hearing, is there any potential that that won't be a physical, be able to meet the true public hearing, or is it going to be a virtual affair?
We're hoping it's going to be physical.
Right.
With that being said, I'll make a motion.
Thank you. And second?
A second.
And a roll call vote. Are you ready?
Yes.
So Councillor Fellows?
Here, I mean, yes.
Councillor Colby? Councillor Colby?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Ganong?
Yes.
Councillor Lunt?
Yes.
Councillor Ward?
Yes.
Councillor La Rochelle?
Yes.
And Councillor Albert?
Yes.
6-0, order passed. Next item is the council orders, resolutions, and ordinances. Order 2020-73, the wastewater treatment plant generator bid and award. The recommended motion is to award the wastewater treatment plant generator bid to Electrical Systems of Maine in an amount not to exceed $105,000.
Good evening, Steve Avioli of the Sewer Department. December 2019, we were given authorization by council to go out to bid for a generator for the wastewater treatment plant. We had some unexpected delays, so it took about 2 months to get that bid put together and put out. Went out to bid February 27th. Had a pre-bid meeting on March 12th, and bids were due on March 26th, which of course was after the shutdown due to COVID-19. So this has been on hold since that time, looking for council approval. So the bid was out for 4 weeks. We only had one contractor that attended a pre-bid meeting. That was the same contractor, was the only one that bid on the project. Electrical Systems of Maine, which they bid $105,000, which is about $30,000 less than we anticipated it would be. So that ended up working to our advantage, that aspect. But we are seeking approval tonight to give approval, to authorize them to do the work. But this work will be put on hold until Diane Barnes approves moving forward with it, until we start recovering from the current situation due to COVID-19.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes, sir.
Reasoning for putting it on hold, Diane, is it just coordinating or is it the spending freeze?
The spending freeze.
Okay, is the spending freeze where this is coming from stormwater, or is it viewed the same, or should it be? I guess the question I would ask.
It still is, it goes all into our checking account. It's all part of our cash flow, even
Gotcha.
though it's in a separate fund.
Okay, so cash flows.
Yeah. Yeah, so, you know, as long as Electrical Systems is in agreement, you know, if you award the bid to them tonight and they agree to put it off. If not, then we should go forward with it because it's such a good price.
That was why I was saying is because, Mr. Avioli, what's the bid specs? There's typically a time frame that they have to hold their bid. Was it 30 days? We've already passed that. How long will ESM actually hold their pricing?
In some conversation with Matt Tessanari of Electrical Systems of Maine, it did not appear to be an issue of holding off on it. He seemed to be in agreement with it. I did not hear anything one way or another where they had any issue with that.
Okay.
Now, we are looking at about an 8-week lead time before we would even receive the generator to install it. So this could potentially be a 3 or 4 month out project, depending on their scheduling once we do place the order.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Please.
And that wasn't be my point. I mean, I would, and again, I don't know the full logistics of when we actually do put a freeze on spending of where we can actually take money and not take money. I guess that was my big concern. So I guess I have the same question Alan does as far as does this actually play that role? But my concern would be is just we do actually have a pretty limited opportunity throughout the month or the summer months in Maine. So this, if it ends up being a 2 or 3 month project, I would like to see it done because I'm sure, Steve, is it you pouring a new pad and stuff for this project or underground wiring? There's just a lot of mechanical parts need to be put in place. It's not just bolting down a new generator. So
yes, correct. And it is, it's basically a retrofit. This building was not designed to have a transfer switch and everything installed for a generator. So it is some extra work. No, probably half of that more difficult work would be done inside the building, but it is still the pad to be outdoors, the generator, they got to run the wiring in and out of the building. So there will be that aspect of it.
yeah, I would just actually ask to the management and council is how we, what is the obligations we have as far as for releasing that money in. And if we can, I'd want to move forward with it just so we can get it taken care of the summer. It seems so this past year we've had more power outages than seem unusual. I mean, for the whole town. So if we're going to have concerns and this was addressing those concerns, I'd rather see them done sooner than later and try to save that good bid.
Diane, are there any other bids that are been put on hold other than this one for Steve?
The only thing that I put on hold is any work on Graziano Square, and I was going to touch upon that on the when we get to that agenda item, and also the Warrumble Mill complex. But we're going to have a proposal for you to move forward on that because of the milling that we'll be getting from all states when they do the 196 overlay this summer.
Yeah. So to be clear on that, the fact that we tabled anything for Graziano's prior at our last meeting, so we're okay on this. This is the only bid that's pending.
Right.
The reason I ask is because when everything broke for my work in Lewiston, I had 9 bids in play. What does that mean to 9 bids associated with this? And the way that we approached it there is the fact that they're out there, they were identified as needs. Let's move forward with them, but let's be extremely clear what we put in the pipe moving forward. I would approach that from this view. And if I'm hearing clearly, if it's an issue with potential cash flow, it's something that will be alleviated by that time frame from the TAN that we're already talking about. And the 8-week lead time and install after that, I'm assuming there'll be a graduated payment arrangement where they may bill you for materials with X 50% up front at worst, and then at payment upon final. I don't see an issue moving this forward.
And we're taking the same approach, Alan, where, you know, there's some things we're gonna have to buy because it's a need.
Yeah.
And, but the stuff that we can get by with, we're not gonna purchase, but there are some needs out there that we are gonna have to take care of.
Sure, sure.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask one more question to Steve on that?
Yep.
Steve, what's the time frame, not the time frame of the project, but what's the life expectancy of this project? I mean, are we looking at this to be a 10-year generator that for the next 10 years, this is going to be pretty much on tap, ready to go? Do you kind of plan that out in your capital of how long this is going to be in presence?
To be honest, that is, being we've never had one here before, that's something that has not been planned. But at the same time, we have generators in a couple of our pump stations. One of them was installed in 1974 and is still fully operational. It will be getting replaced during our Davis Street pump station upgrade due to the fact that there is some parts and materials are getting tougher to come by for it due to its age. But I would say life expectancy would be in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 years. It's something that's going to exercise. It's on its own on a regular basis, approximately probably 1 hour a week, and will only be used during emergencies. So as long as we maintain it properly, we should get a long life out of it.
Thank you.
I need a motion then,
I'll make that motion.
and I need a second. And to be clear, the motion that's on the discussion is the fact that are we actually removing the on hold part of the recommendation from staff? I would advocate, I would ask for a friendly amendment to that motion to include the elimination of the hold.
Well, if the motion is to award it, I can amend it or can revise it. It hasn't been seconded yet, so we just say,
Yep,
releasing the whole.
that's what I'm clearly hearing. Cassie, you good with that?
Yes.
We did have a second, sorry.
Yep, no, we did. I heard her. All right, any other dialogue on that topic?
So the motion's made by Cassie, Counselor Colby, and seconded by Counselor Fellows. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right.
Okay.
Call the roll.
Okay. Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
Counselor Ward?
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Albert?
Yes.
Counselor Ganong?
Yes.
Counselor Colby?
Yes.
And Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
7-0, order passed.
If I may make one more comment, even though we're already all approved, just so everyone's has the understanding that due to COVID-19, I have no idea where the manufacturer is right now with their production. So we may be able to put this order in and it may be on hold on their end. So we'll have to have that expectation with it also.
I'm finding that everywhere, Steve, so that's a fair assessment. The ESM will be very specific once they get the order in this award, so we'll see where it plays in.
Thank you very much.
Next item, 12.
All right, order 2020-74. Amend the vote 2019-140, use of unassigned fund balance. The recommended motion is to amend the vote 2019-140, the use of unassigned fund balance in the amount of $394,058 to $404,058, adding an additional $10,000 to cover all the items listed.
So what happened here is the list is complete, but my total of 394,058 was not. That should have been 404,058. The addition was wrong by $10,000. And we did set aside all of those items and all of those amounts from unassigned fund balance.
Okay, Don, you had a question associated with the 13%. Have I sufficiently covered that with your ask this morning on that, or something Diane could speak to?
No, I was just going to say go slow because the actual, well, as I see the agenda, it says 394. It actually should read 404. Is that what you're saying? You didn't correct it.
Right.
And over here, under the excerpt up here with the 13% of operating budget, is it still 13% of the operating budget, or is it different now?
It'll be a little bit less than 13% because the 13% of the operating budget plus your overlay came to 394,675. So we're gonna go over that by $10,000.
Okay, so that brings the operating budget percentage down slightly?
It doesn't bring the operating budget down, it just brings the amount that we have on.
Well, I meant the relationship. If it's still 13%, that's fine.
It's close enough to 13. We're still within
Okay.
our fund balance policy.
Okay. That's all I was concerned about.
Nope, it was a good ask, and I appreciate you asking that question this morning, because given the discussion that we had with the budget earlier, there is a trigger that we drop below that threshold, that we have to come up with a 3-year recovery plan, and that's why we have historically lived where we've been, not at the high end of the figure for the 16%, but 13 is a good target figure to not trigger the 12% rule. That said, I have a first and I have a second? I do not.
Make a
I
motion.
need a motion. I see Fern. I need a second.
I'll second.
I have Dawn.
I'll second.
Other discussion?
Okay.
Call the roll.
All right. Counselor Colby? Counselor Colby?
Sorry, yes.
Okay. Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
Counselor Albert?
Yes.
Counselor La Rochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Lynn?
Yes.
Counselor Ganong?
Yes.
And Counselor Ward?
Yes.
7-0, order passed.
Next item, Twyla?
Order 2020-75 to solicit bids for fiscal year 2021 public works projects. The recommended motion is to authorize preparation of requests for proposals for paving, road striping, and road salt.
You heard the motion. They took the temperature of everybody's palate for paving for the 475 for the coming year. I would make the motion that we allow our public works director to go out as we did last year, knowing that it's a short construction season, to be able to be on a company's consideration for the coming season.
Make the motion for discussion.
Second,
I'll second.
I have a first and I have a second. Questions?
I think the paving part we've already discussed and moving forward. The striping part, Randy, is that actually going to be similar to last year? The striping, and the question I know that me and Don's are always asked is, are we going to consider the idea of the striping down Davis Street or where the pedestrian trail is on the road? I'm not sure if that actually got marked off last year or not.
Actually, it's going to be significantly less because we have 7 miles of road. That's the 196 project. And that's going to be, we're going to have to either find out footages where we want to use it. Davis, best, place to use that. We can make that line a lot wider. That designates the walking path. I'd say make the strip about 1 foot wide. We'll have the paint to use because we won't be doing 196. I believe when DOT comes through, they'll do the striping themselves. So with that being said, I think the striping costs will go way down this year.
That's
Mr.
good.
Chair, I
I
have a
just don't
question.
pass. Sorry, Don, go ahead.
No, I have a question too. In addition to that, my thought was the crosswalks, for a lot of them in the recent history, we've used 2 lines and that's that going across. Where they originally, like for example, on the trail or where the trail crosses, in all the places, we could use a lot more definition of where the crosswalk actually is. So I've seen it in other towns where there are wider stripes or there's more striping in there so that it's very identifiable. Are we planning or can we do any of that in some of those locations?
Yeah, one of my predecessors wanted only 2 lines, but I want the lines going across also. So that's going to be implemented this year.
Oh, good. Thank you.
The question I have on striping is, it's on a per foot or per mile basis. How do we do it?
It's per foot.
Perfect. So if we're reducing the square foot, then that's what brings the price down. We're not contracting at a certain level and keeping it the same.
That's correct. That's why last year the contractor we had let me know at the end of the project that he had X amount of feet left to go and where I wanted him to go to use that up. So he went up Frost Hill, and Frost Hill hasn't seen stripes probably since it was 196. So we put the double line up through there, and then a couple other places that's never seen stripes before. Let it be known that those roads aren't going to get done every year. It was just someplace we had an overrun of footage that he wanted to use up, and that's where we used it in some other areas that never had it before.
Any other questions? Call the roll, file.
All right, Counselor Albert? Counselor Albert?
Yes, sorry, mute.
Counselor La Rochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Ward?
Yes.
Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
Counselor Ganong?
Yes.
Counselor Colby?
Yes.
Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
Order passed 7-0.
Next item, 12.
Order 2020-76, authorization to refinance the qualified energy conservation bond municipal lease. Recommended motion to authorize the town manager to refinance the QECB as recommended under option B.
Okay, so our current lease, we have about 11 years left on it, and we're paying an interest rate of 5.63%. Option A would be proposed a 10-year agreement with 3.45% interest. That would increase our annual payment from $76,090 to about $79,747. That's option A. Option B is an 11-year agreement, the current years that we have left on the existing agreement at 3.59% interest. And that would drop our annual payment down to $74,239 from the $79,000. The difference between option A and option B is option A, we would save $115,509 over the term of the refinancing and interest. In option B, we would save $96,452. The reason we chose option B was because it was a reduction in the annual amount. You can certainly go with option A if you want to save more interest in the long run, but just know that your payment will be a little bit higher and I'll have to adjust the budget. But the only reason we chose option B was to lower our budget a little bit. But I'm happy with either way.
Can I make the motion so we can get the discussion rolling?
I take a second.
B.
I'll second.
I have a first and a second. Go ahead, questions.
So that's what I wanted to kind of dive into this. I understand, and Diane, please help me because I read this and I just want to make sure I understood it right. So really, the only thing that's separating is obviously the savings piece of things, but it's 74,000 versus 79,000. Is that right?
Right.
Great. So for me, I'm a fan of, I know the payment's a little bit more, and that's going to add more of an ask for the budget, especially in these trying times. I still think it's a better deal to save more money. So I'm in that camp. That's where I live.
That's my vote as well, too. And one of the things that we've been talking about is interest over time, and we've aggressively gone over that over the last 4 years. And I think this is another opportunity.
So option A is what you rather go with option A. Correct.
That's mine. That's anybody else want to weigh in on the other part? Because there is a certain level. Diane's made the recommendation here, or for both, for consideration. Because if it's about cash flow, that could be addressed as well. Seeing none. Any other questions?
The only thing I could say is that right at this moment, it's all about cash flow. That's all I can say. But other than that, I'm in the same camp. I like to get things done quicker and cheaper, even though it costs us more on a monthly basis.
I agree.
Call the roll, please, then, Twyla.
All right. So you have a motion by Counselor Albert and seconded by Counselor Colby to authorize the town manager to finance the QECB as recommended under option A. Counselor Albert?
Yes. Sorry. Option A was option B was the one that the finance director had recommended. We're going with option A, which is the shorter term, right?
Correct?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry. I was clear on that.
Okay. And Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Colby?
Yes.
Counselor Ward?
Yes.
Counselor Ganong? Counselor Ganong? Oh, you're muted.
Yes.
And Counselor Lund?
Yes.
All right, so order passed 7-0. Next item. Order 2020-77, authorization to take out the tax anticipation note. The recommended motion is to approve the execution of a TAN with the First National Bank for the terms specified in their proposal and to authorize the finance director and town manager to sign the same.
I would make a motion to go with the finance director and town manager's recommendation.
I would second that.
Okay.
Any other discussion on the item? Please call the roll then, Twyla.
All right, Counselor Ganong? Counselor Ganong? Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
Counselor Colby?
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Ganong?
Yes.
Counselor Lund?
Yes.
Counselor Ward?
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle?
Yes.
And Counselor Albert?
Yes.
Order passed 7-0.
Next item, Twyla.
Ordinance 2020, number 78, to amend Chapter 46 Streets, Article 3, Section 4667, documentation required prior to council acceptance. This is the first reading. The recommended motion is to adopt the following amendments to Chapter 46 Streets, Sidewalks, and Other Public Places, Article 3, Street Acceptance Standards, Section 4667, documents required prior to council acceptance as presented.
This item has gone before the planning board and has their support.
This item is just an administrative change. The code enforcement officer, planning board staff person said that Mylar copies of plans are no longer required at the Registry of Deeds. So, but our ordinance says they are required to be filed here at the town office. So this just changes that.
They're not only not required, they're not permitted.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So recordable copies of plans of the street for recording at the Registry of Deeds is what we would want them to file here.
So housekeeping, any reason not to support this, Don?
No, it should be supported.
Okay. Would you make the motion for me?
I'll make that motion to go with the recommendation for that agenda item.
I'd second that.
Any other item discussed? Please call the roll.
Counselor Albert?
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Lund?
Yes.
Counselor Ward?
Yes.
Counselor Ganong?
Yes.
Counselor Colby?
Yes.
Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
Order passed 7-0.
Next item, Twyla.
Order 2020-79, the status of the Moxie Festival. The recommended motion is to cancel the 2020 Moxie Festival.
I'll make a motion. So we can just get discussion.
I'll make a second for discussion.
Okay, we have first, we have the second. Don, this is your item for the agenda to be able to discuss. Why don't I defer to you to be able to bring us up to speed, and then we'll go from there for dialogue.
Well, the only reason that I wanted to see it on the agenda was because I thought it was time that we at least discuss what the future held for Moxie Days. In view of the fact that legally right now, we can't even have mass gatherings over 50 people in both July and August. And given the fact that, PCL just submitted a letter today indicating that they're going to cancel portions of what they supported with it. The Moxie, other festivals around town, and the Moxie Congress has also indicated that they don't want to support it this year. So they asked us to postpone it. However, I realize things can change, and unless something is costing us more money, we can hold off till June 1st without any kind of problems. If it's not costing us more money or more staff or more issues. I see a recommendation here that the staff is recommending that we not have it. I'm not sure who all the staff is in that recommendation. So I was hoping
that was me.
Okay, well, I know that the police chief has submitted some questions and concerns, and so had fire, and in the name of public safety. So, but that's given the fact that we can't have gatherings, large gatherings. So my hope at the time I did this was to get some comments from Mark and from Brett, because both of them, or particularly Brett, seem to have ideas that we could use as alternatives for the Moxie Days as we know it. So I just wanted to get some discussion, and whether we vote or not tonight is not important to me unless it is costing us more money. Or in the case also, I don't know, here we don't have insurance now for it. So that's an issue too.
No, we have insurance for the festival. That's covered under
Okay.
the event insurance in case of a cancellation due to weather. That's what we don't have.
Oh, okay. So I was just looking for input from two staff members in particular, what their thoughts are. And Brett's hiding, but Mark's right there.
Brett, why don't you join us with your audio and video? Absolutely.
There he is.
Can I add one thing to dialogue on this, Don?
Sure.
If you don't mind, myself and Cassie representing representatives from council who are actually on the Moxie Festival as well. I'd like to be able to weigh in after staff, or at least my take on it, to see if there's anything new that goes with that, if you don't mind. That's
It was just my view. It was just my view that we should have a discussion.
No, I agree. And I think it's a good time for discussion because, like a lot of other polarizing discussions, I have heard from a variety of people over this past week on the topic because it's personal to a lot of folks. So I think the time is actually very well overdue. So by all means. That said, Mark, why don't you give us your take first, and then we'll go to Brett and go from there.
Okay. Thank you. First and foremost, I want to make sure that everybody knows that I can speak on behalf of my staff, that we would never do anything to put anybody, no matter who they are, in jeopardy or at risk. So with that said, I'm not advocating for the festival to go forward if the current mandate from the Maine CDC and the governor's position is still has not changed. But what I'm hoping for, and I'm telling you, it's sparking some creativity from not just my staff, but even listening to Brett talk about some of his ideas. We have to do things differently in the future. And that's something that we're all thinking about. But if we could do something smaller scale, something that would make sense, do something for just our community, maybe. There's a lot of different options out there to explore. I'm not planning anything right now. Most of my effort and all of our staff's effort is to look at what we're doing for summer programs for our kids. That's our first priority right now. We haven't been, what we normally would be doing is, getting things down for the vendors and all these entertainment. We're not doing that right now. We're holding off. But I don't see any pain or harm in waiting until the 1st of June, just because there's things that might change by then. I mean, since 3 weeks ago, there's a lot changed since then. 4 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, and even who knows what's going to be 8 weeks from now. So I'm not opposed to holding off until June 1st. I don't think it'll hurt. We're not spending any extra money. We're not adding any additional effort on behalf of our staff. We have other items on our agenda that we're working on to get our summer programs up and running. So with that said, I'd like to hear from Brett as well. Unless anybody has any questions for me.
No, let's let Brett go and see where the dialogue takes us.
Sure, thanks for the opportunity. I guess my thinking on this originated with an inquiry from Councilor Fellows probably a week or so before the recent announcement by the governor, essentially banning public gatherings for the next couple months, at least through August. And my idea really was to sort of pivot from a cluster of activity to more of a spread out, linear type event that would leverage one of Lisbon's greatest assets, which is the river and the trail. And thinking if we could have, and this is pie in the sky, and just kind of trying to be creative and trying to think about how to make it happen, would be to have some activities focused on the river, perhaps boat involved, and that would allow the crowd to spread out down the river trail. Again, that thinking preceded the announcement from the governor's office, and so I think in many cases it's hard to conceive of how that could be done legally. However, it was fun to think about. I think it is an asset that Lisbon has, and in the future it might be worth revisiting as a way to gather folks and really celebrate Lisbon and attract new attention to the town.
The one thing that I would offer, hearing both at this point, is the fact that decide yes tonight or not decide tonight. Either way, I think we need to have the definitive message out of where the position is, even if it's actually addressing the, in no way, shape, or form do I think that the festival as it stood in years past is actually going to be something that is going to be in play for this July. And the public actually deserves something on that. But if there's anything that we can do to be able to preserve at least that memorializing rather than a straight cancellation, I'm in that camp. Clearly, public safety is the primary. Clearly supporting our governor and the recommendations that are actually out there are key. But educating folks of where we may be leaning for discussion, I think, would be prudent at this time. The other part to that, I've seen things from Moxie Council, Congress, I should say. I'd ask, is there any recourse if we actually go forward with a much smaller event on a local scale? Is there any issue with either them in not postponing, or Coca-Cola for any of the contractual items that we have in place for the festival?
With Coca-Cola, we would just have to revise our agreement because of it depends on what date. It doesn't sound, well, it depends on what the governor does. If she stays firm on her decision right now, whatever you decide may be at a later date. So we would just have to amend the agreement, the dates on the agreement. I don't think that they will have a problem. As far as Moxie Congress, I can't answer.
Okay, but it's something we could, if we chose to actually postpone a decision tonight on business meeting in June, is the fact that we could at least fact check that with them to find out what the issues would be.
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
The visualization that Brett had given me was after he mentioned it, I got to thinking about, I could see something going down the river, boats or whatever we have going down a portion of the river, and somebody's drone above it taking pictures of it and broadcasting it on a video that we make. If you got to go that far, there's a possibility there to save it at least a little bit. So anyway, that was my thinking. The other thing is, I know that, and we all know that Representative Mason asked us to delay a vote. I don't know what his motivation was, but so I don't know if we want to take that into consideration.
Well, one of the things that
Mr. Chair?
I don't want to speak for Rick, but in the fact that I'm in charge of a festival parade that's actually named in honor of his wife in that regard, I think I could actually say that it's personal to him. You know, so the fact is he wants to be able to see it as well too. So I'm in that same place, and I still have been approaching this through the last 6 weeks, saying that I'm expecting the other shoe to drop and somebody's going to make that decision for us. I don't think that we proceed in the way that we've done in years past, but where we've already got fireworks actually paid for this year, being able to do something of that, I think that's an easy one that we could actually social distance by putting people in their cars to be able to see something of that nature. I think you can do a virtual 5K event, and I think you can do a car show pretty easy, which are some of the key components of this festival for little to no cost that actually could still have some sort of message rather than a straight out cancellation.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
So all of these are great ideas. Some of the things that I've heard from a few folks as well, asking to delay the vote. And I am of that mind as well. But a couple of things that I wanted to point out here is that I think what we're seeing with a lot of different events, whether they've been canceled or that they've been delayed and rescheduled to a later time, that's what I'd like to focus on for a moment here. I know we've had Moxie usually the second weekend in July for as long as I can remember, but I think there are a couple of things going on. Public safety is number one. I don't think any one of us questions the fact that if it's not safe, we're not going to do anything. I think that we put that one to the side for a moment. We talk about the obvious stuff, which is some of the streaming and getting creative with how we take some of the events and make them work. I'm of the mind that we reconvene back on June 2nd, which is our first meeting in June. And what we can do then is, if we need to, we can push this thing into August. I see no reason why we couldn't. There's nothing that's conflicting. And if we're trying to scale the festival down, what better way to do so than take it out of its traditional spot where people would say, hey, I'm going to go up to, I've gone up there every year, I'm going to go up there and it's going to be there. If we're going to move it, the likelihood of somebody coming or a flood of folks because, say, maybe the governor gets challenged legally and some of those powers get taken away. Not that I've heard anything like that recently, but let's just say if something like that was to happen, then it's not going to be a small trickle, it's going to be a floodgate that's going to open up there. Because if there is some sort of challenge to the governor's power and it is overturned legally, then that does take all bets off to whether or not businesses can open, whether or not gatherings that have been restricted will now become open. So there's a lot of things to kind of weigh in on this, but I'm more of the line that let's just not throw the baby out with the bathwater and let's get to June 2nd, take a survey the land and see where we're at. And if we had to pull the festival to want to maintain it at a smaller level, maybe look at even another date in August somewhere. My 2 cents of what they're worth.
Cassie?
I agree. I think right now, too much has changed already since this whole thing has started. To cancel to 2 months in advance without really knowing what could happen between now and then, I think it's just premature at this point. So I say we wait until June, find out where we may land on that timeline as far as the governor's order, or if she even, who knows, they might open up the state July 1st and, relax the guidelines as far as gatherings. But if not, I like Norm's idea. There's nothing saying that we have to do it in July.
Mr. Chair, I would just say I'd go along with that too. And like I said, if there's no cost involved in delaying, then it doesn't seem why we couldn't do that. I also think that it'd be worthwhile to use that month between now and July 2nd or June 2nd to have staff investigate other possibilities more thoroughly.
Agreed, and that's where I was going to land, and it's part of the public message that we need to actually craft and why we're actually delaying the decision. So clearly we have recommendations that if this were to go at present, the way it had been done years past, that clearly doesn't support the governor's recommendations or mandates. It doesn't actually, and it goes against the police and fire chiefs' recommendations at this time. So we have a little bit of homework to be able to do, but I'm of that same mindset. Anybody else on the topic?
Yeah, I want to come back and just pitch one more thing. As I was thinking about it here, talking about moving into August, you know what? I think Moxie would taste really good at the end of September. You know, kind of crisp. You can leave it outside overnight, get nice and cool. So just keeping in mind that we could even make this an end of summer, first early fall thing. We're not bound by any sort of July date. All bets are off with this current, the way 2020 has been kind of handling things. So I'd say we get a little unpredictable like this year has been for us, and say, let's just keep it open, revisit in June and talk about it. If we have to get creative, and if we do want to keep it on a smaller scale, to keeping it more towards getting to a place where public safety is a gradual sort of thing that we're rolling into, rather than trying to be at the tip of the spear when the doors first open and the floodgates first open for business as usual, then maybe we can at least kind of, you know, investigate that from June and then going forward, and then make a decision somewhere. I like the idea of looking at a later date out of the gate versus trying to force it to happen in July. But I'll go with whatever the consensus is, as long as public safety is number one. So there, that's all I got. No more.
Mark.
If you wait until October, you can call it Moxie Fest.
Yeah.
I have a question for Mark. Is there anything stopping us from postponing it to August or September? I mean, my only issue with September is that we have football going on and whatnot. So,
yeah, some challenges.
No. You know, it'll look different in October or September, but it could be a one-day festival. It could be a two-day festival, but we have plenty of time to look at it. And you know, I think the people that were asked, the police chief, fire chief, and Lisbon Emergency, I think their comments are actually spot on. If you were to ask me April 25th if we should have a Moxie Festival, I would also say no at that time. That's the information that we had at that time. So those guys definitely making the right decision by saying that, but they were asked at the end of April. Let's ask them again June 1st. If the state's open, then Lisbon should be open. That's my thoughts.
How about an Indigenous Columbus Moxie Days?
John, stirring the pot over there, Don.
Can I go with a no?
Chair, may I?
Yes, please.
Again, I think it's all interesting conversation, but I think what we're kind of not talking about right now is no one's actually talked about the idea of Moxie happening the way it usually does on July with a big parade and fireworks and stuff. So we're all talking about postponing it, moving it on, doing other stuff, which is interesting conversations. But with that being said, we're basically saying that we're not doing a Moxie Fest as usual. And I think we need to get that out there because people, this is turning really political, which is really a shame because that's not what Moxie is all about. And the idea that there are people who's going to get the message tonight that we're going to think about next month of doing this as a big event in July is just wrong. I mean, I don't think there's anybody on this conversation tonight that's saying this is going to happen. The Moxie Festival is going as planned because it's not. I mean, regardless, we can't. Legally, it would not work for us. I mean, I can just give you my input, talking to business leaders and some of the biggest supporters in town that we've had for this event. None of them actually that I spoke to today actually had any interest in supporting or doing any financial backing to the event this year, only because of what's out there, And again, that's just the people I spoke to, but I believe are some of the biggest sponsors of this event. They actually are just really concerned, of the information we're getting, not just from the state, but the federal. And someone said, even if they were to turn the state on tomorrow, it doesn't still change the effect of where we're at as in a world right now where we're at. And I'm not a gloom and doom person. I'm not at all. But one of the things I think we need to do is just realize that, I don't think Lisbon wants to invite 30, 40,000 people to show up. And the downfall is if you look around us, all the communities around us have already put out their events, all the way up to the county. So the county is about as far away as you can get from any of this. So, I'm all for the idea of doing smaller things and actually trying to rethink Moxie and come up with an idea. Moxie Fest at Beaver Park would be great for a local thing, who knows? But But again, the idea of us moving forward tonight, thinking that we're going to try to vote June to see if this event's going to happen or not, I think we're already discussing that it's not, in a sense. If we listen to our own personnel as far as our safety, and Mark, maybe you're right. Maybe if they were on tonight, we could ask them, because I don't think there's really any information that's changed since back then as far as for the health and concern of where they would be. I mean, if you listen to the national people, whether you like to or not, I don't really know. They're actually saying that fall and winter could be actually more trying than we are right now. So again, it all depends who you listen to. I don't really go by my opinion. I just go by what we're actually, you know, what the circumstance we're in. And I just don't know if we're actually sending the right business smart message, saying that we're still thinking about doing this as normal, which it sounds like we're not. But I think we need to put that out there, saying that, you know, our event that we typically hold in July is not going to happen. But we are re-looking at doing other possibilities. But it's going to be a local thing. It's not going to be inviting people from out of state in to do it. But again, that's my opinion of that part of it. But I guess it's one of those things that we need to really look at. And I don't want the wrong message to come away from tonight that we're thinking that for some odd reason someone's going to sue the governor and we're going to turn the state on tomorrow, because that just doesn't change the facts of the world. Do you mean? It may change the political facts, but it doesn't change the health facts of what we're dealing with. So again, my opinion, I think as a business community out there, the ones that I deal with, they're not actually seeing this event or actually looking to sponsor an event this year that actually is going to bring a lot of people into the community. But again, that's just what I see, and I know everybody has a different take on it.
One of the other points that I would make, following up from what Fern's saying, is I don't know if everybody on here is aware of the fact that, to your point associated with sponsorship, the fact that Julianne has actually resigned as the Moxie coordinator for this coming year. So I'm not of the mindset that we would actually be looking for sponsorship at all, and wherever we land on any of this discussion, because that's reality. To the point of the fact is, can't be talking about reinvesting somebody's funds when we don't know what there's going to be. So in that, clearly postponing the discussion to a June meeting is one thing. Communicating that no way, shape, or form that it actually goes the way that it has in years past needs to be the message that comes out of this discussion tonight. So I would like to make sure that that is clear. In that is the fact that the discussion that I'm hearing here is the fact is if there's any chance of anything that can be done locally, deferring that is the discussion that's being discussed.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
The only concern I have, going along with what Fern is saying, I'm hoping that we're not projecting that everything is normal. I hope that we're projecting things are so uncertain that we feel that we can wait until June 1st to make a significant decision. If that's not the case, then we probably should make a decision.
The question is, Don, is what type of decision you're going to make on beginning of June that you wouldn't make now, I guess is the question. I mean, I don't think we're actually going to change anything that if we do this fall as a smaller event, if Mark actually holds a running event this fall or something, if you can do it without having, meeting the state guidelines, or a car show this fall, if we can meet the guidelines. I don't see that as actually consider that being part of our July Moxie Festival at that point. I just see it as actually being another town event that we actually try to bring in and get Moxie spirit behind. So I just don't know. I mean, I don't know if someone could actually paint the picture of what this June vote's going to be. I guess I'd be better about the idea of telling you whether I want to defer to June to make it or not, I guess. I mean, if June, we're going to decide whether or not the Moxie Festival is the same as what it is. That's one thing. But if we're in June, we're actually just trying to vote on something that Mark could maybe put together in September. I don't really know if that's actually, I don't even know if that's even practical, or if we, why would we limit something that could happen in September that we don't know where we're going to be? But again, I guess if we're going to wait to June, what's a vote that we're going to be doing, or what's going to be bringing forward as a vote?
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
So I'll tackle that front. So I think from where I'm coming from, who I've heard from on this, the reason that we want to wait until June is to go ahead and get a better lay of the land. How long have we been in this thing now? 6 weeks, 7 weeks? So we've been kind of sucked into this vortex. And how many times on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, has the message changed so consistently, so quickly? Now, to that point, health is health. We can't change the dynamics of that. What we can do is take a look in our area. So when I look at Maine, specifically, I look at where the hotspots are in this thing. They're not closest to us. So that's the first part of it. Could people from those places travel to us? Heck yeah, they could. Could people from away who are living in camps up here come to it? Yes, they could. So I'm not burying my head in the sand and choosing not to identify those things. I think what I don't want to do is I don't want to send the message in these uncertain times that while all of our neighbors in surrounding communities have said, you know what, we're out. And I don't fault them for it. Good for them. That's their decision to make. Where we're at as a community is saying, let's get creative. Let's think this through, and let's not just be knee-jerk in our approach. We can cancel just as well on June 2nd as we can on May 5th, but this way it gives us another 4 weeks to get, hey, could we do this effectively? Hey, Mark, could you and your staff, now you have some time to kind of breathe on this, go back to the drawing board. Is it reasonable to think that we could do this virtually and have it be, scaled down and have a decent outcome? Is it reasonable to think that we can carry that Moxie spirit that we have into a different month, whether it's August or September, and be comfortable with that, thinking about, well, is it going to be worse in September and August, or pardon me, September, October, or whatever, because we don't know what this thing's going to bring. The same way we want to plan to be, cautious about, could this COVID thing take off again in a round 2 somewhere? Absolutely, we need to be thinking about that. The other side of that, too, is that we've had some pretty encouraging numbers coming from other countries that have had their round 2 and were able to contain it in a very effective way. What does that look like? So we have a lot of things that we can still investigate. As more time comes, more data will come with that. So that's where I live on that. And that's why I say I appreciate the message getting out to the public that we have no intent at this point of trying to run business as usual on a Moxie Day weekend in July. I don't think that's responsible at all. But at the same time, I'm not ready to say, let's just cancel it and then we'll come to some, event. I think this should be the Moxie event, just identifying a scale back and what that might look like at a different time. And if it's not feasible, we can say, but at least for right now, we're investigating what it would look like to try to move that to a different time with the hope that it will become, safer and the state would be a relaxed restrictions to a point where we can get there. There's no harm in waiting for another 30 days to see if that's an option. That's my opinion.
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
I think, and I'm not trying to speak for Fern, but I think what Fern is saying is that by making no decision at all to modify or do anything at this point, we are projecting that things could be normal next month or in July. And I think that's his fear. And I don't think that we want to project that. I do think we don't have to make a decision on whether Moxie and its name exists, but we do need to make a decision on whether we're going to hold the thing as usual in July. And to wait till June 1st could be a problem.
Mr. Chair.
Sure. Go ahead. Go, Jeff.
Well, I was just going to say, just to kind of reiterate, I mean, there's cost benefit analysis. There's no cost for us to delay the vote. There potentially is a cost if we decide to cancel it now or whatever. So at this point in time, I would say that between all the discussion that we have enough information for all of us to make a decision at this point in time and kind of go ahead with this thing.
You're dancing right around call the motion is what you're dancing around. I can appreciate
I
it.
am.
Okay. Can I just offer one last piece on that? I am of the mindset, the fact is I would like to hear from staff what actually could happen that second weekend in July that actually works with the current restrictions that are in place to be able to enforce the issue. Because to Fern's point, to offer something that's there, this is what we're looking at in that regard, and then we'll make the decision whether that's a go in June or not. I am not really feeling the love for something that actually gets either backburnered or pushed off at a later date, because then I think it sounds like an afterthought in that regard. Is if there's anything that actually can be done with the current things that are in place, I'd put the energy there to be able to willing to hear 30 days worth of dialogue to be able to defer a decision until that June 2nd meeting. And I would make that motion that we actually either move the item or discuss for tabling to June 2nd, depending on which way you guys want to play this.
I'll second that motion.
What is the motion?
We tabling or which way are we playing, Jeff? Because I would say table to June 2nd.
I would say that as well. Table to June 2nd.
That's a motion made by Jeffrey Ganong Councilor Ganong, and who seconded it? Or was that your motion now, Councilor?
I'll make the motion if he wants to be the second, by all means.
I'll be the second.
All right.
May I chair it? So tomorrow the news media reaches out to Diane and says, so what's happening in July? What's Diane to say?
We haven't made a determination.
We're looking at a much smaller scale event that actually works with current there for consideration at a later date.
Is that what the motion says?
No, he's asked me what I would actually respond if that was a request.
I think it's really important because I think we're going to be, I think we're actually going to be looked at as a community where, I'm not saying we're a small restaurant on Sunday River, but we're going to be looked at as actually somehow expressing what our view is on it. And some people have had the opportunity to see tonight, some haven't. So when they reached out to Diane or Brett to say, tell us what's happening in July, I think it's only our due diligence to let them actually have that information, whether or not they're telling them, hey, look, we're not looking for a big event that's going to bring 30,000 people, but we're looking for more of a local event to actually take care of our own community. That's one thing. But to actually just for Brett to say, no, we're not going to have any information to June, I don't think, or Diane is going to actually, people are going to fill in their own blanks. But again, that's my concern is
I agree with you, Tim, because they are going to ask in that regard is the fact that we've postponed the discussion to be able, because the intent here would be to hear out what could be done working with the current restrictions for a festival in July on a much smaller scale locally.
Hey, Alan, can I say something?
Sure.
I was just watching Channel 8 News before I got here, and there was a thing on where they said that town council was going to be making a decision on whether or not Moxie Festival was going to be held this year or not. So, like you guys were saying, I'm sure Diane's going to be getting the calls in the morning, from either people interested in participating or not. Going to be finding out whether or not this thing's going to be a go or not. That's just what I saw on the Channel 8 News.
Look, I'm just going to come in with this right now, if I could, Mr. Chair. Let's just not dance around this anymore. I think the easiest way to get around this, I'm a fan of tabling till the second, but I think that there are some other minds who kind of want to take a temperature and see where we're all at. I think we've talked it all through. Rather than make this postpone or table till June 2nd, let's just do a hard yes or no right now. See where everybody's at. I'm just at the point where I'm saying, I don't want to keep kicking the can so we can do this exercise again in June. If the majority of us come down that we want to, move forward with the Moxie Festival, we can always amend that down the line in the next meeting in June. I don't think we want to dance around this. I know I don't want to keep dancing around this. If we have a hard and fast no and it says yes, then that sends a clear message to the community and the news media around us. They'll know our intent is to move forward with the Moxie Festival. And if people want to light us on fire for that, let them do it. Because I got zero problem. Send them my way, Diane. I'll talk to every one of them. Because I don't care. I'm not interested in being a lemming that follows everybody off the cliff just because they do it. I think
exactly.
We're grown-ass people. We make decisions based on what's important in our community. I'm not looking to challenge a governor. I'm not looking to challenge. I don't care about them. End of the day, I know what the festival means to our community. So right now, I think if you're asking me honestly, we're in May 5th. This festival doesn't happen until the second week of July, and there's been a plan that's laid out for opening this state back up. That festival wouldn't be inside of that plan. So I get that, and I think we all do. But we're not making a decision about running it today. We're saying that we're not going to cancel it today. That's my stand. But you have a motion on the table for pushing it to the second. I'm happy to vote on that. But if we need to amend it, just make it a hard up and down, fast, yes or no, I'm down with that too. Either way.
I think I heard Fern and I know I heard Cassie.
I guess my opinion would be the idea that if we would make a vote yes or no, what are we actually voting on as far as for Moxie? I mean, it's a challenge. I mean, the hardest thing is if you're modifying it, you're changing dates, you're doing a lot of things. It's not the Moxie Festival as people think it is. And I think that's a message we need to get across. I mean, if we're still in the assumption that the beginning of July, you're going to want, 30,000 people plus more now in a sense, because if there's no other festivals around us, we're bound to get a lot more people. I mean, if you want that, I mean, I think that's one of the things that you need to portray. Myself, as being a counselor, I just think that Diane and Brett need a solid message, because you're going to have every news media tomorrow following up on this. And it's not the idea of us being caring about our people or not. It's basically they're just looking at the politics of it, where we stand, and what's our decision behind it. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. So I think we need to actually try to determine whether or not we're planning on having a. I mean, Alan, are you actually still in line for still taking information on parade floats and all that stuff at this point, and taking?
No, actually, because I don't, unless I hear otherwise. The closest thing that I would say to that is that if you could do something on the water with boats, but getting all those boats on the water is still going to not fly with that 10-person or 50-person rule to be able to make it happen. So I don't know how that plays in that.
So that 10 parking spots down there, I don't think that's going to happen, right?
It doesn't, right. But the point that I'm making here is the fact is I am not of the mindset to be able to say yes or no in that regard for a vote. I think the clearer thing that's here is to be able to, the motion that myself and Jeff have made is to table for the June 2nd with the message that when knowing that people are watching and people will make the decision, is that the recommendation that I would have for the media outlets would be the fact is we're trying to consider a event on a much more local level that works with the current restrictions for our community. Is that enough, Diane and or Brett, to be able to deflect that?
So,
Mr. Chair, I would be personally a lot more comfortable with a motion to do something in June if it stated more explicitly what we were going to do, not just kicking the can down the road. Otherwise, I can't support it.
But in that regard, you asked for a conversation tonight. Now you're forcing a vote, and the fact is the conversation is actually not even allowing for consideration until we actually have it prepared.
Well, it seems like there are several of us that want to vote. If we don't want to vote, we don't want to vote, and there is no message.
Okay.
the only thing that I would say is if there's anybody here that thinks that you're going to have the festival as usual that second weekend in July, then you ought to postpone the vote until June. If any of you don't think that, or if the majority of you don't, I think you need to vote tonight, but you can also come out with a message that you want to do something later on a smaller scale. I mean, I think it's as simple as that. I mean, if you really think that there's a chance that you'll do it like we have in the past in July, then you ought to postpone your vote.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. I don't think we need to be hard and fast and black and white about this or that. I think what we need to do on this particular message, to Fern's point, is if we're worried about what the media is going to portray us as on the backside of this, then we can go ahead and take the public safety aspect out of this altogether. I'll say this right now. We vote today to push to the second, and we'll come up with a better plan, to Don's point, of what that scaled back festival would look like. I'd be A-okay with putting out to the media and giving Brett and Diane talking points. I'm perfectly fine with canceling the parade today. I think that's a no-brainer. We cannot have a parade. We can't have a parade in July. It's just not a reality. So I think if we're saying these things, if we're saying we're going to try to investigate doing a very scaled back version for the traditional July timeframe, and we won't be able to get a better determination of what that looks like until the first week of June, when then we're making a decision whether or not we're going to move forward. If we have a scaled back that meets the requirements as dictated by the state right now, that could allow for participation, if nothing else, from a virtual perspective. I don't know. I don't have all the answers for that. I'm just saying that we're trying to see if we can fit a festival inside the box in the normal time frame, minus all of the things like the parade, like the fireman's muster, or whatever that might look like. Anything where there's large gatherings of people. Concerts in the park, for example, PCL, and so those things. I think we can say, and we all agree, it's not going to look the same in July. There's no way we can expect that it would be. But I think to say, yeah, it's not going to look like that, so we just say no, and then we'll do something other than Moxie related under a different umbrella under the rec department later on down the line. Yeah, that's fine. But do we want to keep the Moxie tag moving forward or not? I'm fine with it either way. I'm hearing from a few of us who are just saying cut our losses and run, and if we get some good news, maybe we do something in the fall. That's what I'm hearing. If that's the general consensus and the majority wants to land there, okay. But let's just find out one way or another tonight.
Is it easier at all for the group to actually make a motion to actually just postpone it versus the idea of canceling it? That way there, it does give us an opportunity to actually bring it back at a later time. Not saying what that time would be, but at least that way there, if Brett or Diane was to get a call, they can actually say the council decided at this point to postpone it to a later date. And that discussion is going to keep moving forward. That still doesn't stop Mark from actually working and trying to figure out some other ideas. I mean, it's just, it would be a message to be very easily portrayed to the media that the council itself at this point feels that, you know, at least the festival will be postponed at this point in time with more discussion the fall in June. You know,
I like that.
You know,
I like that.
I'm seeing Mark.
Yeah, I think Fern's spot on. It's really important that the wordsmithing of the decision tonight is laid out perfectly. I mean, when you guys were talking, I was thinking we could tell the media or whoever that we're planning on canceling June 1st or June 2nd. And it's true, because if the mandates that were laid out right now by the governor are still in existence June 1st, then nobody's going to want to do a festival, you know, in that sense. Nobody's going to want to do it. None of us are going to want to do that. And so if they want to dig into the questioning, then our hope is that things get better and the governor changes the mandates. There's nobody being, you know, being cared for in hospitals in the state of Maine come June 1st. There's the epidemic is completely evaporated from the state of Maine. That's our hope. And that's my only thought was when we were starting to talk about this was to give people hope, not false hope, but, you know, let's see what happens. If the governor changes her mind or changes the scenario of how things are going in the state of Maine, then we didn't cancel. There's going to be a lot of festivals that did cancel that, you know, they might regret it. I don't know, especially if they canceled in September, October already. But
So my ask there is, I think it's a great idea. My thoughts are, I like to postpone. I think it's the right message because I think that's what we've been talking about. We're not, and maybe I'm wrong. I heard a couple of you, Alan and Kathy, talking about something for July. Are you guys thinking that that's something you still want to investigate, or do you feel like postpone's the right message at this point?
I personally want to just wait until June because, like I've said before, everything has changed day to day to day. Who knows? Maybe come June 1st, something might come about and she opens up the whole state. And, you know, like Mark said, everybody else who is canceled, you know, we will not have canceled at that point. I think it's premature to decide right now something 2 months out. It's not going to hurt us to wait another 30 days, but it could potentially hurt us if we just decide today to cancel it.
Well, nobody on this message tonight is actually projecting that the Moxie Festival goes like it was in years past. I've heard it from a variety of different folks associated with that. There is nobody here projecting that discussion. And the fact is, whatever happens will actually have to be based on what the governor's recommendations are at that point in time. Everybody
and waiting till June will give us a clearer message.
But postponement has, if you're looking for simple, the simple is a yes or no to be able to do it, or you deal with just that. The postponement makes sense because that's a clear message that we can send, because I do not want to be the poster child. I am not a Rick Savage. The fact that I don't think that we need to be the person challenging. My personal views on a lot of different things is the fact is I love burning it down just for the sake of it, but this is not something that I want to actually be our legacy as a council at all. In that regard, I am of the mindset that it gives us 30 days to be able to figure out what's there, to be able to come up with a much more educated version of what this would be, because I am still optimistic that there are things that we can do that will actually be on a much smaller scale to actually not have just postponed, canceled, like a lot of other festivals have. That's my mindset in that regard. And I can appreciate everybody's perspective here, because I've heard from the businesses, and I'm seeing Brett for the 5th time actually waving a light that keeps shutting off on him, and I'm amused by that. Thank you, sir. We need to get him a real light switch that actually can bypass that, Diane. Put that on the list for Dennis.
And Alan, if I may, I mean, even as Positive Change have actually talked about not doing their concert series in the early months. I mean, it's one of those things where we're still thinking that maybe later on this year it may possibility, but we're not planning at that point. We're actually saying it's possible. But with that being said, we are meeting and actually talking about how we can actually give some new character to the Moxie Festival, and trying to still some of our biggest concerns is actually trying to offset some of the losses the nonprofits that usually make money during this event don't get this year. So we're going to try doing some funding things in a little different manner. So I think the Moxie, how would you say it? The Moxie want, and the pride is still there. It's just going to look differently. I just think that the message, as Randy alluded to, I mean, coming out of tonight's meeting, well, this is a public meeting, so believe it or not, anything that we say can be commented on in tomorrow's paper, from what dialogue we have here that I know about anyways. So the idea of, I don't think we'll have to wait to call Diane or Brett. I think they're going to get pretty much all the sound bites they need off this particular. And I have no problem saying that we're going to postpone it and actually revisit it in June to see where we're at. I mean, because at that point, Mark can probably have some more information than Brett and to see what the event would look like. But I just want to make sure that the message leaving tonight is that we're not actually looking to have an event that we typically have. But then again, that's my view, not everybody's.
No, and you're echoing what everybody else is saying. Nobody comes out the other end, and the fact is that this actually survives the ways it has in year past. I'm not hearing that from anybody.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
What is the motion now on the floor?
Motion on the table for myself and Jeff is to postpone the discussion until the June 2nd meeting. No, table.
The main motion is to cancel the 2020 Moxie Festival, and the amendment is to table that decision till June 2nd. So you have a motion to table that main motion. Is that clear? You have a motion?
Yeah.
Table.
It's not as muddy as the last one we did, guys, so we're still good so far.
That's the motion on the table?
Yep, the message that clearly for the soundbite for anybody that's listening is the fact is we're looking at a potentially very different local festival or a possible postponement.
I'll second.
You can't put another motion.
That's not a motion.
Oh, my bad.
That is strictly for the media outlets that may be looking for an answer tomorrow.
I thought we were talking about making a change at this moment.
No. No, I've done enough damage here tonight.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Can I move the question then?
You can try. Jeff already tried to beat you to that, and we weren't real good at it.
Well, you need a second, and we can move it.
Move the item. Roll call, Twyla.
Wait, what are we doing?
What are we actually voting on, I guess, is a question too.
The motion to postpone, I believe, right?
Are you ready to take a vote on your amendment to table the main motion to cancel the 2020 festival?
Mr. Ganong was 10 minutes ago. Yes, we are.
All right. So this is a roll call vote to table to the June 2nd meeting, the motion to cancel the 2020 Moxie Festival. Councillor Fellows?
Yes.
Councillor Colby?
Yes.
Councillor Ganong?
Yes.
Councillor Lunt?
Yes.
Councillor Ward?
Yes.
Councillor La Rochelle?
No.
And Councillor Albert?
No.
You have 5 yeses and 2 nos. The amendment passes. So now we're voting on the main motion as amended to cancel the 2020 Moxie Festival, to table that. Yeah, you're just tabling that motion to the June 2nd meeting. So another roll call vote to pass the main motion as tabled. Counselor Fellows?
A yes vote does what?
That's my question. I'm not sure what I'm doing.
Well, I guess maybe you don't have to table the main motion. Once you table it, it's now we're going to bring that motion back on the floor to be decided on
At
June.
that June 2nd meeting. That's what I was.
Yes.
That's
Okay,
why I was asking the point of order.
All right. Yep. Good. All
So
right.
the order, what am I voting on now?
Nothing, Don. It won't run till June 2nd.
We tabled it, right? We tabled that motion to
Okay.
the June 2nd meeting.
Sorry, next item 12.
Order 2020, number 80, the status of the Rurumbo Mill and Graziano Square projects.
Muted, Diane.
So I'm hoping Randy's still here because this is his item. Good, there you go.
He's muted too. Thanks, Randy.
Can you guys hear me now?
You can.
All right, so what I have for the Rurumbo Mill is put it out probably for bid, the crushing of the material. I know you guys given me the permission to spend $17,000 on the rental of a crusher. That was fine and dandy when I had the Volvo Escort to load it and crush the material. But for 2 weeks rental on the Volvo now is $4,800, brings me to $21,800. I can get other companies to come in here and crush it all. I wouldn't have to touch it. They would have it all piled up and ready for me to spread. The reason why I'd like to get that done is Allstate for using that area is going to give me 300 yards, approximately 300 yards, give or take. Whatever I need to get that area covered with reclaim. And at the end of their project, I was talking to Ron Simbari, and he said that he could probably even run it through his paver and roll it out for us if we have it all prepped. With that in mind, if you want that area to look real nice, if we spent a little money now, we wouldn't have to spend it later, and we'd have all the product done for us. The $17,000 is a great idea when I had the machinery down there, but then when this COVID-19 kicked in, everything got kind of put on hold, not knowing where we're going to go with this. It's just a good idea to do it now if we're ever going to do it. If that's what your intent is to have extra parking down there, if we crush that material, burn that pile, and get the reclaim laid down, I think we're in good shape. Also, we need to look at putting a fence along that wall. I talked to Brian over at Brian Eastman over to the Hydro, and he suggested we go with a 6-foot high chain link fence. I suggest we do a black vinyl, all black vinyl. That way it'll blend into the river. It'll be like there's no fence there. Essentially, you won't, from afar, you'll never see the fence. With that in mind, I still need to bring some of the level of dirt back up to the wall so it's all the same, so the height of the fence will be the same. So it's very crucial that we get that material crushed down and used. So that's what I'm proposing for the Rurumbo project.
Cost one more time, Randy?
What's that?
Cost one more time?
Look, I wonder what's the cost of actually having someone else come in and crush it?
The cost, without sending it out to bid, I just put the feelers out, affordable well, and just gave me a price of like $20,000. It's only saving us $1,800, but we don't have to bring our equipment down there, which is our loader. We don't have to have our guys down there, and I don't have to touch anything. They come in, do it, and they leave. I can solicit other prices doing the RFP process. I can send it out to 2 or 3 guys. I've reached out to Kurt Hewlin He's got a portable crusher. He was interested in doing it. So without coming to you guys first, I don't want to get into the predicament I did when we were looking at a truck. I want to come to you guys first and see where you want us to go.
Given the amount that it actually does require a formalized bid in that regard, so I appreciate you asking. I have no issue with allowing you to be able to do so. I don't see that it actually elevates to emergency status to be able to go the other route, which would be direct through the town manager. So this is actually paid for from the funds that we set aside and allocated for that, Diane?
Yes, the downtown TIF funds.
The downtown TIF funds. Now, the amount for the fence, Randy, any estimate there on length and cost?
What I came up with for 600 feet with 3 corners, 2 ends, and a couple of pole posts, which probably doesn't mean anything. That language doesn't mean anything to you, but for material and labor, in my professional opinion, it'd be around $16,000. But I'm usually on the cheaper end. But I'm just going to be between, $16,000 and $18,000. I'd say somewhere in that vicinity.
Okay. So again, I'm sitting there hearing 2 different bids, and if you're of the mindset, if I'm hearing you correctly, you would be advocating doing the crushing first to be able to have the elevation correct to be able to secure the fence properly.
That's correct.
Anybody, any other questions, Randy, on this?
Yeah, I do. I have a couple of quick questions. So with the folks staging up at the Graziano Square project, how long will it be staging, and when will we pick up to finish that project?
That project's due to be finished in August. The schedule is, I was on the DOT meeting the other day. Start date was May 4th, of course, and their finish date is August 26th, with them coming through Lisbon around June. June 21st, they're scheduled to be going through Lisbon.
Okay, so that's when they would stage in that time?
They're going to be staging there anywhere from now till August.
Till August. So
they're going to be using the front half, though, not the back half where I'm at.
Okay, so you will be able to do the work on the back half while they're staged up front, and then when they get out of there sometime after August, we can complete. Is that what I'm hearing?
They're gonna help me by spreading that stuff, according to Ron Simbari, which is the guy that runs Allstate.
And I think you know where I'm going with this, because there's been so much pushback about how that project stalled and failed and blah, blah, blah. We know it's all BS, but at the same time, having another project down in, because the Warumbo Mill project will be completed before the Grosley project in theory, right?
Absolutely.
So that you can see the optics of that might not be the best from a community standpoint. So I want to be able to at least understand project-wise. I think we all need to understand what that looks like and how we can be able to talk about that in the event that someone tries to kind of bring something like that up. We can talk it down pretty quickly.
It all stems from the opportunity at hand. I mean, right. if they weren't grinding, we could leave that stuff there and it wouldn't bother anybody. But we have the opportunity of not having to spend the money on reclaim and getting the parking lot done as everybody wanted it to be done for a fraction of the cost.
I think it's important too is to this isn't the final project for the Rumble site. This is basically just taking the opportunity, the product we have, to lay it out flat. As Brett knows, there's an ongoing multi-year discussion with that property. So I don't think it's actually a fair assessment that, so to speak, the Rumble will be done for the Graziano, because I think the Graziano Square will be done in full color much before the Rumble site will be completed. And Brett maybe can add to that or not, but I think the optics are, as you said, Norm, that we need to keep moving on the Grazi Square. I'd like to have maybe Randy put together, or whoever's actually working that project now, come up to see where we're going to fall on that, and I know we've locked down funds right now, but that actually, I know there's still some funds available possibly that we could use there potentially. So little things make a big difference. Grass on that site would look huge, right? The idea of getting, you know, some of the optics that we're actually moving forward there would be really important. So I'd like to see a plan on how that can move forward, just so we can, to Norton's point, make sure that Lisbon and the town keeps moving forward.
If you guys want me to, I can keep you up to speed on what's going on with that sidewalk. I know that's not on the agenda, but what's going on is they proposed, because of the scaling that happened over the winter, Mandy Oliver from Oliver Associates reached out to the contractor. The contractor is going to go good and try. We've approved a method that they're going to grind down the top and resurface it with a product that's guaranteed. So they're going to give us a guarantee with this product, and they're going to resurface that because it was in the workmanship. Correct, Diane?
Yes, that's correct. The only thing we're waiting on right now is just some references on where this has happened before. This type of product has been used. We haven't received that yet from the contractor. And obviously, if we go this route and it doesn't work out, then the whole sidewalk's going to have to be replaced. And he understands that. We're just trying to get references on where this particular product and material has been used in the past for the same reason.
So, to follow Fern's point, is there anything that can be done up to Graziano Square right now, or is that put on hold for the current time period with the staging?
It's more or less been put on hold because of the emergency spending freeze that we have in place. And also because of the sidewalk is still unresolved at this time. I mean, I don't, you know, if you want to put some grass seed down and try to get some grass growing there, you know, that'd probably be a very inexpensive cost. It's you know, putting the fencing around and doing the paving, that's probably a little bit more expensive, but you know, whatever you want to do. I wouldn't do anything near the sidewalk at this point until that's resolved.
I'm of the mindset that grass needs to go in there because it's a considerable piece that actually could be at least moving it forward.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
As far as I know, that area up there, I walk it a lot. The sidewalk looks pretty bad, but I don't think there's any gravel. I mean, any soil on the property now. It's all just covered with gravel.
Yeah, when I say grass, I mean it needs to go to loam and seed. Absolutely.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would actually get quotes to find out what it's going to cost us to loam and seed that specific area. And I would start with St. Laurent that did us the solid on that because his pricing is usually fairly affordable for that. So his estimator should be able to give you a number in short order, Randy, on that one.
Yep. I don't know if Dennis was the one in charge of this. I know I was overseeing the project, but I'm not sure if Dennis put a lot of work in this. Is that correct, Diane?
Yes, originally Dennis did put a lot of work into it. Yep.
Also, there's an underground sprinkler network too. I believe it's planned that obviously would be affected if you put soil on it.
Exactly, and that's the other thing. If the council wants us to move forward with putting in the underground sprinkler system. Or do you, I mean, I don't know if it's necessary, but that's just another added expense that we would have to go through.
I would actually make a recommendation that before our next meeting, maybe Randy can get together with Dennis and come up with a plan on where we want to move forward so we can actually see it on paper and find out what we're going to be doing for sending out for bid. Because I know there was a lot of discussion on the idea of that being a very sandy lot, which may not actually lead to good grass growing without some type of irrigation. So I think what we need to do is actually find out exactly what needs to be done there, what the recommendations would be. We don't want to put a lot of money in loam and seed and just have it get burnt up. So find out what their true recommendation would be and come forward to council with a written recommendation. So then we can actually put a price tag to it and then Alan move forward from there.
Okay.
that'd be my recommendation. It's really up to the chair to,
No, by all means, I don't have any issue with that because the Graziano is easier because I'm not hearing anything right now. There's no definitive action like a bid. We need a recommendation from staff, which we don't currently have. So back to where I'm both side, I am of the mindset I would authorize the Public Works Director to be able to proceed with 2 bids, one for the crushing and one for the fencing that actually need to happen payable from the appropriate TIF funds.
second that motion.
Any other discussion on the item? Twyla, you clear on that? Can you call the roll if you are?
All right. Counselor Lunt. Counselor Lunt?
You're muted, Mark. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Counselor Ganong?
Yes.
Counselor Ward?
Yes.
Counselor Colby?
Yes.
Counselor La Rochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
And Counselor Albert?
Yes.
The order passed 7-0.
Next item, Twyla?
Order 2020-81, the tax acquired bid award.
We put 2 pieces of property out to bid recently. One was 24 Bowden Street and the other one was 5 High Street. We received 2 bids on 24 Bowden Street. The minimum bid was $17,070.70 and the high bid came in at $61,500. We received a bid on 5 High Street of $19,300. The minimum bid was $14,457.59. My recommendation at this time is to award the bid to Jeff and Bridget Burkhart for the 24 Bowden Street property in the amount of $61,500 and to reject the bid for the 5 High Street from Chris Poirier in the amount of $19,300. I have been working with the person that's living there that is not the owner and put him in touch with a bank, and he will be getting a loan to pay the taxes in full so he can continue living there. So that will happen before the end of the month, and I can end up claiming it back to the owner, and behind the scenes, they're going to work out the deed change.
I would make that motion.
For discussion, or you all set for
For discussion, either way, yeah.
second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, Vern, what's your question?
I think it's I like the recommendation. If this one's a strong, I think we got a good bid on that house. So I think that's good and there's really no controversy there. The other one, if there is someone living there, I think we can do everything we can to try to keep that remaining. I feel that that's actually a good role to go. And if it doesn't work out, we always have the option to go back, right, Diane?
That's correct.
All right. I'm good.
On that, following up with Fern, the fact that I think we did well to get bids over this sequestered time period with everybody. I don't know how that was actually received, so I would dismiss. So even if we put it back out to bid and we just postpone 30 days, it doesn't change anything. But realistically speaking, I think we can do a little bit better on anything there. And I agree. The fact is, we are not in the business of wanting to displace anybody from their home. If we've got an avenue to be able to consider, to be able to take it serious, to be able to keep them in it. So I would support that. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, call the roll, Twyla.
All right, Counselor Albert?
Yes.
Counselor La Rochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Ward?
Yes.
Counselor Ganong?
Yes.
Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
Counselor Colby? Oh.
She's working on it. One more time, Cassie.
Yes.
Right on.
Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
All right, order passed 7-0.
Next item, Twyla.
Order 2020-82, the Beaver Park Cabin Rental. The recommended motion is to authorize Mark Steven and his family Permission to move into the Beaver Park cabin with employees lodging being regarded as a part of the employee's compensation and allow the town manager to negotiate the terms and conditions of the agreement.
You guys heard in my previous discussion there in that regard is the duties associated with that were an overtime item on the recreation budget that actually will be picked up. It's part of the justification for the increase that's in there. And anybody have any issue with the suggestion to be able to make it a stipend arrangement that actually is in lieu of that, to be able to tie it to what he's actually doing if he chooses to move out of that cabin?
I just have a question about, I mean, I'm not sure if more of this needs to be worked out between Diane and Mark as far as how that would actually play out. I'm not sure if it's already been a discussion or not. Just to me, looking at it, if I was talking about that, one you're going to pay taxes on, one you're not, as far as to your payroll. But I mean, there's a lot of different dynamics on what comes out when you actually move it from a lease to a wage, right? But I'm not really sure how you play that out, or if you do it as a zero figure with the amount known. I'm not really sure, but maybe Diane, do you actually have more insight on how that would affect anything when it comes to retirement, payroll, insurance?
So what you're saying, Alan, is to give him a stipend that would cover the amount of the rent? Is that what you're saying?
Actually, no, be tying it to what is actually there. It's my understanding it was a $6,100 overtime item that actually covered Beaver Park duties. The fact that
right.
It's not a direct line, but it's what it's actually coming out, because it's my understanding, again, is that the justification for the increase that's in the budget was related to those duties, but it's only a partial piece of it. So Mark is of the mindset, and I can appreciate his perspective. He wants it clear as the fact that he is paying rent to be in that cabin. So the lease agreement at itself is one thing, but I'm saying the fact that would it be better if he chooses to move out of the cabin to actually have it be a stipend that actually could be removed to be able to be picked up at a later date rather than compensation for something that he would no longer be doing or obligated to do, not living in the park.
So I guess I don't understand what you're saying.
Mark, if Mark agrees to actually be living in the park,
right,
and you have this to be able to be doing it, tied it in. If you put it in his wages, what if he actually moves out of the cabin because a year from now he's got another opportunity or something at that point? You taking a stipend out because he's no longer in there to be able to meet those duties is a lot cleaner from that perspective. Am I off on that? I mean, because it's again, what we as a council need to be able to do is to be able to empower the two of you to be able to work it out, because that's why you're seeing it's there, is because we had a previous arrangement with the previous two occupants, and the fact is he's pursuing there. The fact is, but if we're tying it to a compensation piece, I think the stipend is cleaner to represent his interest.
Well, I think the only way, that's the language that I was told by legal when we did it for the other employees.
Yep,
it's part of the compensation, but there's no compensation. You know what I'm saying? It's part of, you're allowing an employee to be there as part of their compensation package. There's still going to be rent that's due, so I'm just not sure. There's no stipend involved unless you want to pay him a stipend over and above what he's, besides what he's going to be paying us for rent.
Maybe I misunderstood. I thought the actual stipend that was in the recreation directors was for compensation for the duties associated with the park.
That and the Moxie Festival.
Okay, so taking just the duties at the park itself, if it's tied to him living in the cabin, I would actually go with it actually being cleaner from a stipend position, because if he chooses to move out of that, it would actually be something that would not be payable.
Right.
Versus wages, once you give them in, you don't take it out.
I think you're saying instead of adding it to his wages, have it as a stipend?
Correct. Does that at least pass first blush for your future consideration between you two for discussion?
Yeah, I would, I mean, part of it's Moxie too. I would want to we'd have to figure out what part of that stipend's cabin and what part's Moxie.
Yeah,
Just
in that
Mo-
regard is that I think we just picked the wrong time to be talking about a Moxie stipend.
I know.
You
Well,
know, the fact
I
is that
know.
after the last meeting, and I don't want to, I do not want to roll our recreation director under the bus associated with that because of this topic. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm, again,
Let's vote on the agreement, and then we'll work out the stipend part separately. How's that?
Mark, you good with that? Because this passes the straight face test for what you were looking for you were clear in that regard. It's the fact is just looking to be able to get what was there on the other and not wanting to actually have it be portrayed in a different light.
I don't think Mark's here.
I think it's really important
Oh,
that,
there you are.
yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
I think you lost me earlier, or I lost you, but I think it's really important that, you know, that Verla lived there, she paid rent. Sherry lived there for several years and she paid rent, and it's really important that I pay rent as well. And how the rest works out, you know, there is additional duties. I know the other person, the Sherry at the occupancy had for 5 years, and she was getting, I believe, 10 hours of overtime for every pay period. So 5 hours a week overtime. It wasn't a whole lot, but it was compensating for making sure the gate was open, make sure it was closed anytime after hours. That was needed to manage the park.
Okay, so you're not opposed to it in any discussion to be able to defer the piece for the pay, whether it actually comes from a pay or a stipend arrangement, as long as we proceed with the rental agreement between you folks tonight.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Does that work for you, Diane?
Yes.
So we don't have to modify the what's on the table right now. We just
No,
have to
you do
vote on
not.
it.
No.
Just making that clear.
Yep.
We have a first and a second. I don't believe we do, right?
I'll make that motion.
A second.
Second. I got a second. Any other questions? Please call the roll, Twyla.
She's muted.
Yep.
Thank
There
you.
we go.
Counselor Fellows,
Yes.
Counselor Colby,
Yes.
Counselor Ganong,
Yes.
Counselor Lunt,
Yes.
Counselor Ward,
Yes.
Counselor La Rochelle,
Yes.
Counselor Albert.
Yes.
Vote passed, 7-0. Next item is the Order 2020-83 to reapply for solid waste grant to expand program at the transfer station. The recommended motion is to authorize the town manager to submit an application to DEP and receive the funds if awarded the grant to grow the residential composting program by expanding appropriate infrastructure at the transfer station, increase collection service levels from the current organics collection contractor, conduct educational outreach to the public on the benefits of organics diversion, and provide buckets to additional households in Lisbon to enable greater participation.
I'll need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I need a second.
I'll second.
Questions?
So if I may,
Yes,
this
please.
sounds like it's just an expansion of a program that's actually been working well. And it's a grant, right? Basically trying to try to get more monies to make that happen on a broader scale.
That's correct. There's a 25% match requirement, but Randy's staff is there manning the transfer station. So that's a pretty clean, easy way to leverage investments the town's already made to pull extra funds from the state.
Sounds good to me.
Hearing any other questions? None, call the item, Twyla.
Okay. Counselor Albert,
Yes.
Counselor La Rochelle,
Yes.
Counselor Ward,
Yes.
Counselor Lunt,
Yes.
Counselor Ganong,
Yes.
Counselor Colby,
Yes.
and Counselor Fellows.
Yes.
Order passed, 7-0.
Next item would be communication
business.
reports. Does anybody have any from any of the various committees that they would like to bring in?
You heard what I had to say earlier, so I don't have anything beyond that.
I would like to, if I can for LDC, I'd like to have maybe Brett just kind of give a highlight of he is trying to move forward in the LDC meeting this month, I believe. So maybe he can actually just highlight how people can contact him if they have an interest in listening on.
Yeah, pretty excited about it. We were on hold there for a month or so in limbo with some exciting work that we've been working on around visioning for the Rumbo process, some CDBG grant applications to support facade improvements. And as Fern just mentioned, we will be convening on the second Wednesday of May, as we always do during normal business. It'll be a Zoom meeting on the 13th at 6 p.m. If anybody has any interest, let me know. I can include you on the distribution list for the agenda. We'll be looking at, we'll have Randy's agreed to join us for that meeting to report out on similar conversation that we just had around Graziano and the Rumbo redevelopment. We'll be discussing a grant application, a pretty substantial one, to the Northern Border Regional Commission to look at improving public access, public infrastructure there at the site, river access, and facilitating some commercial development at the Warrendo parcel, and reviewing the CDBG work, facade grant, and a community visioning process for Warrendo. So pretty exciting meeting. We're still fine tuning the agenda. If anybody has any interest, we'll definitely get that out to you.
Thank you, sir. Dawn, how about from water? Anything? You're muted, sir.
Sorry. They have not had a meeting. They didn't have one last month. I just asked, and I haven't said it for sure whether they're going to have it or not. She said she's sitting in an agenda.
That's what I thought I knew too, but I just wanted to hear it from the liaison. Thank you. Anybody else? Next item, town manager.
We had a Zoom meeting last week with MDOT on the Route 125 project. So right now, the scheduled advertised date is September of 21. And they are planning sometime this summer, June, you can hold your breath on that, but they're gonna have a public hearing, but it's gonna be a taped presentation. And I'm not sure how they're gonna do the public comment, but they're gonna do it in a way, it's gonna be some type of site that you're gonna have to go to give public comment, but it's all gonna be taped, the whole presentation of what's gonna happen on Route 125. I'm not sure that that's gonna be the best way to go, but that's all they've got to work with at the moment under the conditions we're all dealing with. So that's all I have under town manager's report.
Okay. Hearing nothing else, next item 12.
Is appointments, Order 2020-84, Planning Board, Lisbon Development Committee, and CDBG Facade Grant Advisory Committee resignation. Recommended motion to accept the resignation of Scott Hall from the Planning Boards, the LDC, and CDBG Facade Grant Advisory Committee.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Ready?
All in favor? Motion.
We have to do roll call, yeah. I'll say Counselor Fellows,
Yes.
Counselor Colby,
Yes.
Counselor Ganong,
Yes.
Counselor Lunt,
Yes.
Counselor Ward,
Yes.
Counselor La Rochelle,
Yes.
Counselor Albert.
Yes.
Order passed, 7-0. The next one is Order 2020-85 to appoint regular member to a planning board. The recommended motion is to appoint Lisa Ward, a regular member on the planning board till June 30, 2021.
I'll make that
I'll also
motion.
I'll second.
I got a first and a second. Questions? Call the roll.
Okay, Counselor Albert,
Yes.
Counselor La Rochelle,
Yes.
Counselor Ward,
Yes.
Counselor Lunt,
Yes.
Counselor Ganong,
Yes.
Counselor Colby,
Yes.
Counselor Fellows.
Yes.
Order passed, 7-0. Next is order 2086, the Lisbon Development Committee reappointments.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
I just wanted to comment, I believe there's someone in the wings interested in filling the planning board slot that's now open.
I saw that today.
Okay.
Is there a sunset on acceptance of applications, I should say, Diane?
On both applications, what do you mean?
I know we're holding finance committee ones, and I know there was one
Oh, yeah.
specifically that responded to the planning board vacancy. And, is there a time period on the planning board part of it?
No,
Can you put it on the next agenda? Because it's
I do, I've put it
it's a
on.
worthy candidate that I would like to see that not delayed.
Thank you.
You could always do that tonight if you want. Since he was already a previous member.
We have the I would make the motion if you want to second it, Don, or vice versa.
Do you want a second or a first? I'll second it.
I will make the motion. I would like to nominate Dan Lehman back to the planning board.
And I'll second it.
We have his application on file. It came in earlier in the week to Diane, and his involvement changed with commitments that he had that is now freed up, and he is very much interested in doing so. He reached out to me 3-4 weeks ago when the vacancy became available, and he saw it, and he asked for my input because he's also put in an application to the finance committee, and he's very interested in doing so. And I told him to actually don't attribute the two. There's a need on both levels, and we'd very much like to actually have you back on the planning board. So,
And Mr. Chair, he was a member in good standing, both as he was full-time, and then he was an associate member when he got into time. So I would certainly recommend it.
anything else on that nomination? Can you call that roll, Twyla?
Yep, so motion is to appoint Dan Lehman to the planning board as an associate member. Counselor Albert,
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle,
Yes.
Counselor Ward,
Yes.
Counselor Lunt,
Yes.
Counselor Ganong,
Yes.
Counselor Colby,
Yes.
and Counselor Fellows.
Yes.
Order passed 7-0.
Diane, can you do me a favor on that? Please notify Kurt and Mr. Lehman.
I will do that.
Thank you. Next item, Twyla.
Okay, order 2020-86, the Lisbon Development Committee reappointments. Recommended motion to reappoint Meredith Lord, Chris Houston, and Dean Willey to the Lisbon Development Committee.
You make the motion?
I'll second.
Call the roll.
Okay, Counselor Albert,
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle,
Yes.
Counselor Ward,
Yes.
Counselor Lunt,
Yes.
Counselor Ganong,
Yes.
Counselor Colby,
Yes.
Counselor Fellows.
Yes.
Order passed 7-0.
Next item, Twyla.
Order 2020-87, the MMA Executive Committee, a letter of interest. So if anybody was interested, the motion would be to submit a letter of interest on their behalf to the MMA Executive Committee.
This is just informational unless we want to actually put the boots to Mark like we've done in the past. So unless we want to submit a letter on Mark's behalf and not tell him privately. I appreciate your attention on this, Mr. Mann. So let's accept it as informational and move on to the next item, please.
Okay, order 2020-88, to rescind the Appeals Board appointment. Recommended motion to rescind the appointment of Brittany Couillard to the Appeals Board.
I make the motion?
Second.
Any discussion? She hasn't actually come forward. She is not actually responding to requests for inquiry by Diane. I completely applaud, and this is why it's on the agenda for tonight. So if there's nothing else, call the roll.
Okay, Counselor Albert,
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle,
Yes.
Counselor Ward,
Yes.
Counselor Lunt,
Yes.
Counselor Ganong,
Yes.
Counselor Colby,
Yes.
Counselor Fellows.
Yes.
Order passed 7-0. Next item is council communications.
Anybody have anything?
I do.
Please.
And I know Randy answered this earlier, and my communication is from a phone call I got today from a longtime resident. And his concern was questions about the idea of why is the solid waste running the way it is right now. I know we as a council and as a town have actually put restrictions on it because of the environment that we're in today. And if I could just have Randy kind of plug in and just kind of give her a concern about some of the things we talked about earlier about the idea of meeting with people and changing money in hands. Randy, if you could just add to that, because I assume the person is paying attention tonight, so we could get a report back to him.
Yeah, because of the governor's orders, we have taken precautions with our personnel, not only for our personnel, but for the residents also. To practice safe distancing, we've decided not to take anything that requires us to write a receipt or accept any money, which is your OVW, your other items, your sheetrock, your roofing, and what have you. So we're only taking the household trash and your recyclables. We're taking steel, we're taking your cardboard, your paper, and just your regular household trash and your recyclables. We're trying to work on a plan to open this back up. We put it out there today that we're actually on Mondays from the hours of 6 to 1:30, we're going to be taking the brush and leaves only on that day. So it's the brush and leaves only. Because of the recent windstorms and what have you in spring cleanup, we kind of owe it to the public, even though we used to charge, for certain items on these days. People are going to be coming in. There's going to be no money exchanged, if that's okay with council. Correct, Diane?
We'd like council to just waive the brush fee for those 2 Mondays that will be open. It'll be the 11th and the 18th.
The 25th is Memorial Day. We're not going to come anyway. So there's a couple Mondays coming up that we're going to have. We're going to be open for 6.5 hours, again, from 7 to 1:30. People can get rid of their brush, can get rid of their leaves, kind of owe them something. I mean, in light of what's going on, people are trying to clean their yards. We get it. We've had a lot of concerned, residents. We've come up with a plan to have somebody up there. He's not going to really interact so much as he is just going to tell them where to back up. He'll push up the piles, and we'll see what we can do. But there's going to be no dumping of any other materials. You're not going to be able to dump your trash or your wood products. Let's say your pallets or your leftover construction wood. It's just for brush and leaves only.
Thank you, Randy.
And as soon as the governor, and we can follow the state mandates, as soon as they open up, of course, we'll open up other aspects, where we start taking the money. There's just a lot of, resident to attendant interaction that we're trying to stay away from right now to keep everybody safe.
Does that address the concern? Same I've heard, Vern?
Okay. Yes, it does. So I think the brush thing was a big issue too, and I know I think that will be helpful.
No, I can appreciate the perspective. I think just denying people the spring cleanup, because I know my gauge has always been, no matter what the spring looks like, is that it's addressed by Memorial Day. June 1st is like, wow, this stuff has been sitting, and frankly, people have been itching, because we were fortunate that a lot of people got out there and did this stuff in March early, and now it's just sitting and not having any place to go. So I appreciate staff's actually vetting this. If I'm not misunderstanding, what's that?
You need to make a motion for the idea of waiving the fee.
I need a second.
A second.
I'll second.
I heard Don. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Yep.
The hours, Randy, you first said 6 to 1:30. You meant 7 to 1:30?
That's correct. We're open for 6.5 hours. It'll be 7 to 1:30.
Okay. On the 11th and the 18th, and I assume we're going to advertise it or let it be known.
Well, we're hoping by June that things will change around. if not, we'll go from there. We'll come up with another plan that works for everybody.
Perfect. Other council committee, I saw you waving, Diane. You had one?
No, that's what I was gonna talk about, was the transfer station and waiving the fee. So that's all taken care of. You have to take a vote, a roll call vote.
Right.
We're ready to take it?
Yep.
Are you ready? Okay. Counselor Albert?
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Ward?
Yes.
Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
Counselor Ganong?
Yes.
Counselor Colby?
Yes.
Counselor Fellows?
Yes.
Order passed, 7-0. And patient.
I had other council communications, if you don't mind, just a couple things. Diane and I have been working, we talked at the last meeting about updates to the purchasing policy. I asked Diane to provide you guys what she's got from discussion for at least a discussion at our next council meeting. So you should be seeing that content there. One of the addressed the revisions for things that we talked about, and one of the things that I tasked Diane with, our purchasing policy has no reference to use of federal funds. So I provided to her what we did with Lewiston's purchasing policy to make sure that we're in compliance. Because when you talk federal funds, you now need to include state funds, which triggers anything for MDOT. So, you know, the active players that I'm seeing here between our PW director and Brett, we want to make sure that our policy protects both of those individuals for anything for future bids coming out of Lisbon. So you'll be seeing that sooner than later. Okay. The next item that I had is clearly saw the email from you guys. Don reminded me of it, of the R.H.R. Smith's audit for this past year. I would advocate that we actually put that on the next council agenda to be able to have Diane read something from the audit firm for the public, which we haven't presented anything about. And that is the only two items that I have.
I can have, see if Ron Smith can attend the next meeting, Zoom meeting, and present the audit. Would you like me to do that?
If you want to put them at the beginning of the agenda so we can get in and get out, absolutely. Why don't we see if you'll do that for us?
Taken care of. If not, can it wait till the next meeting in June?
By all means. The fact is, I know the intent here is the fact that we know some of the specifics, or some of us may or may not, if they saw it. But listen, we owe the public some of that information too.
Yeah, and I really think it's important that it's the auditor that presents the audit.
That's fine.
That way it's totally independent.
He can join us next meeting, if not June.
Yep, okay.
Thank you. Next item, Twyla.
Audience participation for new items. So at this time, public would be able to submit comments for the agenda item during this meeting to brichardson@lisbonme.org.
Brett, I have to go to you. If you're seeing anything, I just checked my email periodically through this, and I've got nothing.
It's been 30 seconds. I've received nothing else, so we're good.
Next item, Twyla.
There is no executive session. It would be a motion to adjourn.
Cassie, I think I heard you way back. I need a motion.
I heard Kathy's. I'll make a second. Kathy did the initial.
Right.
Okay.
Call the roll.
Yes. Counselor Albert?
Yes.
Counselor LaRochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Ward?
Yes.
Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
Counselor Ganong?
Yes.
Counselor Colby?
Yes.
Counselor Fellows? Fellows?
I think he said no.
You did?
From the bottom of the paper mill trail, yes.
Okay. Order passed, 7-0. Stand adjourned at 9:27.
I thank everybody for their patience and time tonight.
Thank
guys
you.
are safe.
Good night.
Take care. Good night.
Night.
Uh,